Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. Well, today, over this weekend, I'm going to be painting on my Western. I've showed you some of this. I'm going to have some bison right in through here. Those are the bisons over there. And I'm going to have my large horseman here. You can see him. I put everything up on the big monitor back there. What I did is I went into Photoshop. Now, this horse is like maybe six different horses. And I like how Dustin Van Wichel calls it, he Frankensteins them together to get a kind of idea of a shape. You don't need to copy it, but it gives you a good inspiration about where you're going to go with the painting. And so I created all of that with some photos that I downloaded from Adobe Stock and some other photos that were available on the internet, and put it all together, and I'm going to use it for inspiration here for the big design. Now, those of you that are in our Facebook group, the Academies, you know, I've already showed you how I did a lot of this, but this board that's right here is 36 and it's by 27. So it's 36 inches by 27 inches high. This is a board. And what I did with the board, rather than going to canvas this time, I'm trying something my daughter showed me called a cradle board. And so I love to paint, especially, I'm going to do a lot of detail on this horse here. I really want him to come forward. I love the conformation on the horse here. So I really want to do a good job on this one. So I'm going to put a lot of detail into him. And so when I do that, I like to paint on a smoother surface, not necessarily a canvas. You can use a canvas like a portrait weed canvas, fill it in with some canvas prep medium, and you'll be good to go as well. So I gave this a couple coats of canvas prep medium and then sanded it lightly, 180 grit sandpaper. But it's a cradle board. You put the boards surrounding it onto the backside, and it keeps it absolutely flat. It is a magnificent surface. I love this. And then I applied a grid, a 2-inch grid to it. And you can see over there, I have the photo with the grid of it. And I put all of that over in our Academies group. Those of you that are members of the channel, I will put those up also on the community page if you have a membership to the channel, okay? All right, so that's all done. So I gridded it out. Now, what I also suggested to all of my beginners, because a beginner can tackle a big painting like this. You really can. But there's 3 parts to a painting that I always say. There's the drawing, there's the technique, and then there's the color. And when you're going to do a big painting like this, I always say, get past the drawing. So what I do is I print off a photo that you can print off a photo that is the full size of the guy that you want, and then I lay this clear plastic that you can get from Dick Blick, and you can get it on Amazon and stuff too, and I take it off with a permanent marker, and then you can lay it right onto the grid about where he is, and then transfer your pattern with the transfer paper like I've showed you before. Or you can do the grid drawing. If you don't want to do that, you can do the grid drawing. The good thing for a beginner with this, and why I recommend a beginner does this rather than going into all the drawing, is that when you get into this technique and objects start to grow and they start to misform as you're starting to paint them, you always have a clear plastic reference you can lay on, and then that will eliminate 2 of the 3 potential problems. Then you have to say, is it my technique or is it my color that's off? You can see instantly by looking through the plastic if it is off. And I do this with animal portraits. I recommend all my beginners. And drawing is something that comes to you after time. So, and we all need to learn how to draw. Okay, and there's lots of great videos on YouTube and stuff for teaching you how to draw. And I highly recommend them. But you can start out big paintings like this and nail some really nice ones just by using some of those methods. Now, those are methods that I learned in the academies. In the Dutch painting, they did that a lot. So, to say, oh no, you have to draw. No, that's not the way the masters always did it. They used camera obscura, so there's a lot of things that are done. The thing is to learn and to constantly grow, and drawing will come with you with that. Okay. All right. So I put the grid system on. I drew all of my mountains, all this kind of stuff with the grid system. But on the horseman, I put it here because I really want his conformation to be really detailed and stuff. So I made sure I have this. So I'm going to be concentrating on technique and color. And I just laid them on there. So I got a really good reference there. And now we're going to get ready to start to paint. So one coat of canvas prep medium, sanded lightly, put a 2-inch grid on it. And I overlaid the grid there. All of these references and stuff I use we'll have in the membership, all right? And then we're ready to go. Now, one of the things I did right away after I did that was I took some white paint this morning and I backed out some of the grid. And then, just with the X motion, I'm going to be using a lot of paint on this. It would cover up anyway. But it starts to give me a better feel for the painting and what this painting is going to look like, okay? And then I took some thin white and just washed over the mountains just a bit to push them back. I want this guy to really come forward. Now, the other thing is I'm trying a different mounting system on this, and I really like it. There's an artist that I've recommended to a lot of you over there, Richard Musgrave Evans. He has great videos. Paints out in the Australian outback. Takes big paintings out into the outback. But he has a mounting system for his canvases. He makes his own canvases and everything like I do. And he has a mounting system, and he uses clamps and stuff. But what I did with this board was I took 2 strips of my extra board that I have left, just end cuts, and I screwed it onto the back of the cradle board here, with just with 1 screw in each one. And then on my this is a huge easel that I have. This easel here can handle like a 16 by 8 painting. It's a beautiful counterbalance easel that I made. And I'll try to find a picture of my daughter. I think I have her standing with it. But it expands way out and it can hold a lot of weight. But it has counterbalance on it so that you can move stuff up and down really easy. And so I put a board on it with gray, so I have just color to look all the way around it. I don't use the actual mounting system that I built into it. And then I just put a little screw on each one of the hold that on there, and this thing is on and it's tight and it works great. And so the reason why I like the counterbalance easel is I can move it up as I need to, into the painting, and I can slide it side to side as I need to. So I really like the whole counterbalance system, especially for doing larger paintings. And this summer we're painting the Mountaineers by Carl Ringus, that big study. And that one is 6 feet by 5 feet, so that's going to be a great study. And I'll be using my big counterbalance easel probably for that one. All right. Let's get going, okay? So we're into this painting now. So you see a lot of stuff to set it up. You can set it up whatever way you like. This is just what I like to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is come in and I'm going to block in some of these areas here. I want to, got a little bit of tape residue there. I want to kind of block it all in, and I'm going to work a little different this time. I'm going to block in some of the areas, get rid of some of the white, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to spend most of the day today working on my horseman. I want to get him, and then I want this big buffalo, this big bison right here, this to set the basically the look, and then I will set stuff back as it goes back. So I'm going to do some casual blocking in. My regular palette that I have here, this is all the colors and stuff that I have. This is my regular palette, okay? And I did add some extra colors there to it, and so you'll see those out here. The colors of light gray and medium white. I'm going to use probably a lot of medium white in the painting here to help tone some of the colors as I do that, okay? We'll get into all of that because there's going to be a lot of things I do. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the soft sky. And the sky that I like up there, it's got kind of a dusty look to the sky too. I'm going to do it a few times. First time through, I'm going to use mostly water. I will use a little bit of the extender. This is the our extender medium that we manufacture here, and a Jansen Art one. And I'll probably use a little bit of this because not really to keep it wet, but I love how it makes the colors more slippery over the surface. So I can lay down a lot of color really quickly. So I'll probably use a little bit of that. But we're going to take our a touch of our Phthalo Blue, and I want this not completely bright. So I'm going to add quite a bit of the medium white to this. And you can see the medium white has a bit of yellow in it. So it's going to kind of green up our background here. And before I fill all of this in here, let's take some white. We'll lighten this up. So I want the actual color along the horizon to have some yellow in it. So, and I want it to be a little bit toned, so maybe even a little burnt sienna and blue over here, so it's a little grayer. And so it's not completely bright blue. I want this to be kind of a real dusky blue, a gray color here, and some medium white. And I want it up around a value 8 or so. So I will add this. It looks like I'm going to have to add some more. But you're going to need quite a bit of paint. Let's take a look. Yeah, it could go a little bit lighter yet. Matter of fact, so I don't waste all of my paint out there, let's just grab a tube of white. And the acrylics dry, this is the big thing. Acrylics dry a good value, 10% darker. Okay, and that's just the nature of this is almost gone here. And we'll just take the edge here. This is almost gone. I got a brand new tube, but I want to get the last little bit out of this. Okay, so they dry about 10% darker, guys. So you have to, and that's the hardest thing I think about using acrylics, is getting the lightness to them that we really need to have in there. So I'll pick up some of this. Let's just, yeah, that's a pretty color. It may not be light enough, believe it or not. It may not. I may need to lighten this up even more. And you get to these lighter values, you think it's your light, but it fools you every single time. I've been doing this for, painting like this for a number of years, and I'm always shocked by just how the acrylics dry down quite a bit darker. But I want to use a lot of paint. I want some beautiful rich colors and paint, and I don't want to be thin on this painting at all. So I'm going to put this on, and then I'm going to, and you can see just a nice X motion, and this is a big board. This will drink up a lot of paint, but don't be afraid of it. Just, go ahead and let it do that, and because that is what really makes the painting. And a lot of beginner students and stuff, they're always worried about, using a lot of paint or the cost or something in that. You can always reduce down the size of this painting. You don't have to do the painting I am. Cut everything in half. Cut it in a 1-inch circle. Then you're only talking about an 18-inch wide paint, 1 inch square. You're only talking about an 18-inch wide painting. But I imagine in this entire painting, when I am all done with this painting, I will use about $10 worth of paint in painting it. It does not take a tremendous amount. We will have more fee in basically building our boards and stuff like that than we will actually in paint. So that's the light color. That's the color that you're going to see right in here. That's right along that edge there. And then I'll go more to the blue, which when I put the blue on, because of simultaneous contrast, it's going to cause these others to lighten up. Now, what I want to do is I want to create the atmosphere here. So when I do that, I'm going to take some extender and I'm going to thin this out now, and I'm going to lightly go right into my sky and right down into my mountains, where I can still see a bit of my drawing here, but I want to pull that color down. I can still see it lightly here. Okay, but I want to pull this color down. This is going to help me with my atmosphere. And later on, we can go back. I've showed you in other westerns where we add a lot of depth to the painting. And later on, we can come back and do that as well. So now I have that pulled down. Now, let's come over here to the side here. We'll use some of that. I want the top of the sky here to go more blue-violet. So again, I'm going to mix up some more. I'm going to take some blue and some violet, about 1 to 1 here. This is probably 2 violet, but let's just see here. Let's just see. And if I add this, let me show you the difference. If I add this, this goes very cloudy looking and grayed. See that? It gets very, very grayed because of the yellow that's in there. But if I add the white, it'll go much clearer, a much clearer color here. See the difference between the two here. So you as the artist, you got to kind of determine. So that might be just a bit too violet. Let's pump up the blue just a bit more. And I'm going to be looking for like a value 5 or so. And I've got to make it actually a little bit more blue than what I think, because I'm going to be painting into the wet blue that's up there. Does that make sense? So, as a matter of fact, let's just model all this together, because we can adjust it several times. Let's just take some of this color. We'll add some extender. This is about a value 5. We'll work this into this up here. Now, see, this is what I like. See all of that? That's all the atmosphere. So try to use a small Xing motion like this, walking it down. As you get down, see, that's that beautiful atmosphere you start to create here. So, and if you want more atmosphere, you use your blue like I'm doing here, a little bit thicker than the first coat we put down, and you'll get a nice atmosphere. This is why I like this, so I don't have to reach so far here. I'll just pull this over here and reach up to there. Here, so I got a nice, and see, I like that, this mist that pulls up that way, gets that nice coloring in there. Now, what I'll do to help soften out the edge, see, because if I drug that down there, I would wipe out all of my atmosphere down here. I'm going to wipe my brush, take out some of that extra here. I'll put in some extender into my paint. This will thin everything in my brush. Now I'm going to thin the blue down so that the blue that I'm putting on has the same consistency or even a little thinner than the color that I had before. You could even soften it, add a little bit of this. It's not necessary, but you could. Here, you want this, so you want, see how the consistency I had here, and this is going to be about the same now here, and that will make the softening, so the blue will not have as much power against it. Now I'm softening it, the two against each other here, and I want to pull the blue down a bit here and leave the other and get some of this nice movement. This creates that sky that has just such great movement in it. Maybe a little bit more blue. I don't want it super thick. So, and I'll pull it down where I think, creating this nice kind of dirty misty sky. Bigger strokes and light pressure will get rid of some of your brush marks and soften off a little bit. But it gets you all of that nice, lovely movement. Now I can go a little heavier, maybe up in the top, so maybe a little clear blue, and thicker. I want it thicker up here, so I set some of that in there. Just a bit of it, right along that very top. And this, it almost like creates this misty, dirty, dusty, cloudy kind of atmosphere around through there, and that's what I like. And so I like some of that pulling down. In the photo, it's a little smoother, but I like this. I'm going to watch how it dries down, and I think that will dry down good. I'll rinse out that brush real quick here. We'll clean up my paper towels there a minute. Now let's go add and paint some mountains. I'll leave my blues and stuff right here, and maybe just take these, push over here to the side so I have these to touch into. We want to start some mountains. Now we want them to disappear a little bit as they go back here. I have just a little burble of paint here. Let me just pull down there. There we go. Now we want them to soften as we go back, so we've got to increase our the look of our the sky into there, a little bit heavier up here. And we're going to do this several times. I want a little more yellows and stuff up here. Burnt sienna is going to be one of our main ones. Burnt sienna and the blue, that's just real pretty gray colors of the mountains, but we want to have some yellow oxide in that as well. Might as well dirty that up. We can take some medium white to start our lightening up of this, right? And just kind of model those together. And I'll look, sometimes I do this, is I'll look up there and hold that up and see, yeah, that's pretty good. It's a little darker than what the photo is. It's almost going to be the value of medium white here. So I'll start some of that. And basically up in the front part right up here, we'll take this and I'm going to push in. This is just the first look, guys. This doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just walk this in. Let some of that sky mix into that right there, okay? And I can look at it, evaluate it. It's going to need to have a bit more color, I think, into it. But for right now, that's not too bad. Now, I will soften this. Let's just reach down here, add a bit of sky to it, which will soften it for some of the back here. So we'll put one hill right up in front of the other right away just by using that sky right into it. Maybe not quite as much. We'll bring it a little closer here. And again, this is the block end. So I'm using this to kind of suggest or look at what it is that the shapes and stuff and the colors more than anything else. I want a bit more color in this. And I don't want this to see how it starts to get because of the burnt sienna, it starts to get a bit of the orange here. But you can make a beautiful brown with a touch of blue, or which is some of the colors I'm going to use on the horse, is the green going into it. So the green will help make this more of a brown. See that brownish color. So maybe a bit of this color, drug into some of that here, and just little marks. I'm going to paint these hills specifically and add interest to them, but this is just the first color look. Does that make sense? So gives me the first color look of it. I'm going to go to my smaller brush here, and I'm going to go down from that 2-inch down to a 1-inch here, and we'll add some. Let's see, this one's going to go here. We're going to have a little bit of this shadow coming into this little canyon that's going to be right there. But then I've got to bring it back up to the light. And so I'll add a little sky. Bring this right back up to the light right here. You're going to do what I call pushing and pulling colors for a while. So just get used to it. Let's go ahead and add some of the shadow. Let's go over here to the other dark part. Blue, burnt sienna, a bit of our softer colors here. Just model that up. We're going to have some darker shadowy kind of cliffs right in here. So let's just go ahead and add those ideas of those right now. And we're looking at, in the painting, like I always say, find where your light source and stuff is, because that's going to be very important. But we're looking slightly to the shadow side of objects and stuff here. So we'll have to keep that in mind. I'm going to move this up a little higher, even than what I see in the painting. I don't like it to come too much in line with my horseman here, because I want him to be the controlling factor here. So I'll just add a little bit of that modeling interest. There's going to be a few little rocks and stuff up here. We'll paint this more specifically, but that will get us started there. I love just to step back on the brush and just give it a little bit of, just see how the brush splits. It's real dry with paint. Maybe some sketching of that right up over here. We'll get into all of that. A little bit of that back there. And a bit of this just drawing down here. Try to keep your marks, so it can be heavier up onto this one, but then keep the rest of them softer and stuff as you add that in. Maybe just how much I can do on this is going to be very dependent upon my horse. That's why I want to get my horse in as soon as possible here. So how much I can do on this is going to be dependent on that horse. Let's move back. Okay, so we'll go back as we go over here. While we have this, let's just thin this out. And we'll go ahead and add a few little shadow marks that we know that I kind of put in. Shadow there, shadow here. But the shadows are going to get softer. Does that make sense? As they go back over to that side. Now let's just wash in some colors there on those mountains. Nice, soft, little extender right into this wet paint here. And again, this is just your first look. I'm not painting this for a tremendous amount of movement and interest. I'll do that later. I'm just blocking in some of the colors so I can relate the painting. Let's go a little bit more atmospheric as it comes over to this side. So basically what happens here is I'm going over to the left is all these hills are going to start out darker, then they become more and more and more like the atmosphere over there. Let's add a little blue and white to that. Lighter yet, bluer yet, which causes, oh, I hit some of that other color. Blue and white, this atmospheric color grade, and you'll be very surprised that will still look quite brown here, but it is getting further over there, further and further over there. Here we'll come in and very specifically, you've seen me paint this before, but here's the main thing that you just keep in mind with all of this is that it's more colorful here than it is there. And as you go that way, you're basically painting in the sky. So let's just take this up a little bit more pointed. There's some interest rocks and stuff that I want to add in there so I could be a little bit more pointed there. And we might even, just for giggles here, we're going to have this little slope put in there and a bit right up here, little rocky top there. That's that one, and this one we could have a bit more, but I'm painting it really soft compared to everything else that I do over here on this other side, right? Now, one of the things I do love is my knife. And I'm going to go ahead and add some knife movement to this since I have the paint and everything here. I'll add some of this. Let's get a bit more yellow, a bit of this burnt sienna here. I love to paint with the knife. And this as you look at that, if you look at the photo, has a big sloping. It's a beautiful sloping side here. So I want to give that impression by doing a longer pull with the knife here and pull down, and that gives that beautiful slope angle to that, and I want to build that a bit. So I'm going to have some darks and some of this, and I use this knife to kind of tap up over this edge as we're going to build that rocky edge there. You know, I love the painting of the knife. Let's go a little bit of the medium white, some yellow in there. Pretty yellows and stuff in there. And pull that down. That's going to give see that draggy interest here. And you see where I get this, almost this modeling there like this. That shows the thicker paint. So when you see that, you know I'm using thicker paint on top of the thinner paint. And the paint skips up over the surface. That's what gives you that. So when I do this with a knife, even though it's nice and wet here, you just slide along really easy. I want the color on my knife a little thicker so I get that skipping action that's there with that. Let's take a bit of that up here. Here and down. Here, like that. I can blur edges, which helps that recede back a bit. Maybe a bit of the the shadows here, we'll add more specific shadows. That could go a bit darker. But I got to be careful here. You know, I mean, you can get way too ahead of yourself by getting too much shadow here right away before we do the horse. So even though this is a lot of fun to paint, I can't do too much until I start to establish what I'm going to do on the horse, if that makes sense. Let's pull a bit of the light here and down this way to create that canyon look here. Okay, so yeah, that's what I want, and I want this mottled look all throughout here. Little rocky mottled look here. Just tap and push, pull some here like that. Rugged area they're in here. And this hillside here and the buffalo was an actual photo that I had, but I didn't like the buffalo and they were too far away. So I went and got more buffalo, more bison, put those in, and so I used the idea of it. And then the lake that's back there, I added that into it as well. And so I added quite a few, built this up. I love to do that in Photoshop. Build up so I have a better idea about where I'm going to go and use this for and stuff. So let's just, that's going to be a little too dark. You see how it has the same power and input as that. And so I'll just take some light color here and just run right through it. Always watching everything here as you go this way has to become the more like the sky. That's what I'm looking for. But I have little marks that I like, those little rocky marks and stuff that are up by the top up there. And so I can just emulate them like that. And some of my lighter color to pull down here, a little bit lighter, a little more, a little bit of my blue. And let's tighten this back up here. Here we go. A little softer sky color here. There we go. Pulling down like that. Yeah, that works. And some of that edge right in here. Just tap that along. See, I love to tap and then slide. It's kind of like those of you that watch the painting of the that I just did fish on, which was the landscape with the fishermen and stuff. When I put that water on the end, I tap and I pull and stuff, and it gives just such a great little look to it. Now, let's grab a little more burnt sienna, a little light. I won't do too much back there yet. Not until I get more up here. I've got a good look of it receding back, and so I'm not going to do that much. But I'm going to come forward now, a little bit of the burnt sienna. And as I come forward in the scene, what I see is the hillside here. The hillside there goes just a little greenish to it. So we'll just add some greenish colors to it. And we'll pull some of this forward here. I want some of this skipping action here. Right in here. And I want to get some of this right up here. I love that. Just dragging right over that. And right in through here. Let's take a smaller brush for right now. So we have some medium white, some green, some burnt sienna here. Right, green and burnt sienna. Maybe a bit of blue. Model all this up right in here. And value-wise, when I look at that, it's probably around a 7 or so. So that's probably a little, that'll dry too dark. So let's just take some of this and just paint up probably a little lighter. So a little more medium white here. Paint up a little close to our guy here. Try to preserve our drawing somewhat. And we'll pull some of this down. Don't get rid of all that modeling. The modeling adds a tremendous amount of interest, but we got to remember the modeling here is not the interest for our painting. Even though that looks great, you know, we've got to get something to advance in front of it, right? So we have to be a little careful, guys. Have to be a little careful when we start out. This is why I want to get this coloring and stuff in, and then we'll talk about the horsemen and stuff here. Let's take some of this, even some of this, all of this with the light, and let's just give us something here to work into on this side. Let's just pull it down. My 1-inch brush, a little extender, so I have some stuff to work into. Let's just pull it down here. Stay out of your horse and stuff for right now. And this is what we call negative painting, just painting right up around him, blocking him in here. We'll eventually take some of the colors right over him, right over the horse. I'll show you that. But right now we're preserving as much as possible so that we don't get all confused with it. Preserve as much as you're drawing as possible. As you paint forward, that'll keep the perspective to it in the drawing, and you won't worry about being wrong on something. Let's pull this forward a bit. This is just a little undertone. I'm going to add yellows and trees and all kinds of stuff here. But this is just a little bit of undertone in there. So it comes through here. So I look at that there. It's got to pull some more of those greens and stuff down. I want to do that. So we'll just get a little green, a little yellow here. Bit of that. That's pretty coloring in there. Maybe just a tiny bit could change this because this is such a neutral color. So let's just pull this down, tap it a bit. So see how I get this? See how I get this modeling that's in there? That's because this color that I'm putting on is thicker than what I just put on there. So it's sliding over the surface. If I push hard, I can really soften it out. If I lightly go over it, I make those pockmark kind of things, which I like, which makes it look like little trees and stuff like that. Now, you can take a brush and soften over that. So, you know, you can, and I had rinsed that brush, so I've got to really pinch wipe out the water. I don't want to have too much water. What is water? Water is our solvent. So if I have too much water in it, it'll remove it here. So I've got to be careful. So I get rid of the water, maybe put in a little bit of extender, very light pull, and you can see how I can add the slope and still leave a bit of those marks there, which will make it look like all kinds of, you know, stuff going on in here. So very light pull, just a few pulls of it. Always in the direction, like you're in a little valley there, always in that little direction that you want to go there. Let's add some more darker, maybe a bit of blue, burnt sienna blue and green here. Some of these, there's going to be some trees right in here. So we're going to want those to stand out a little more green here. And drag these up, just drag it up, leave some of those marks there. We're going to emulate the trees here, right along this edge here, right? Now, you can take I'll use my 1-inch brush here, and just soften, like I'm going to put a ridge line right in front of it, so I'm just going to pull that ridge line right there, right up in front of it, and use those colors in that, and let those trees sit back there, and I can pull through, get very, very light. Sometimes a dry brush will work, you know, very dry brush, but and I have to wipe my brush because I pick up color as I'm pulling down into it, softening some of those edges and that movement there. So I got to be kind of careful here as I put those edges and that movement in there when you're emulating that. That looks pretty good. Let's take some of our blue from our sky, our white, lighten it up a bit. And again, we're just blocking in. We're going to do more a lot more, but this is just a block in here. Let's pull that right up into here. That's going to be that water back up over there. It's probably could go a little lighter. Let's take even a bit of our sky right here and just pull through that. Right there like that. And you know, you can soften in many different ways, but I want to soften that edge and stuff that's there. And so I'm just going to pull my mountain right down into it here. Just right like that. Got to make sure you wipe your brush every once in a while, else you carry your water everywhere. There. I'm just going to soften that back a bit. And yeah, we'll take some of our land here right up against that edge. Just blur those together there. Right along that line there. That looks pretty good. We'll pick up, and again, this is blocking in, but it gives you a pretty good sense, you know, of where we're going to go here. We'll start adding a bit more yellow to what we're doing. Medium white, yellow, maybe some of our browns. The browns come from blue, green, and burnt sienna. So you might want to just mix some of those up here. But let's just add a bit of this so it's a little bit yellower. So some yellow, medium white, some of our browns. And let's just pull this edge as it's going to come right up here to the, you know, to the front as we're coming up towards the prairie here, getting more yellows and stuff into it. I'm going to spend a lot of time on this up in here, getting some of these colors just the way I want them, transitional tones coming through here. So I'll do that. But generally you see this more golden yellow as you come up into the foreground, and so I want to be able to get some of that on. But again, you know, like everything that I paint, I'm going to do it several times. So now we're going to go a little further back. So when you go further back, you're going to reach over here and add some of your sky back there. So it's the yellow is going to come right in here towards the sky, and we'll use that to recede some of this area back here, right in there. And then the yellow will come back a little bit, so just a little more yellow as it comes up, and it starts to come forward over here, and this will make a tremendous amount of depth if we keep that. And this will keep a tremendous amount of depth over there for him. So on this side, I'm working some more of this color in. And that's what's giving me my receding edges and stuff like that, right? But we're going to have bushes and other receding parts. So, you know, all along through here, little bits of this color showing up here. And that's where I really like to paint it with my knife. So, and we'll do that. Break this up a bit. A little bit, keep the values a little closer together. Right in there. Isn't that kind of neat? That gives that. And we're, you know, in the photo you've got some great, like little lines of bushes and land and stuff, prairie and lines of bushes like rabbit grass and stuff, and the angles, guys, let's put a little more green and some of this in here. The angles that you pull are so important. You've got to pull the right angle. So I'm going to angle up. That's what's going to make this hillside here. So we'll add a little bit of the greens back into here. A little bit of that in there. And again, this is your first look. But let's go a little bit more yellow, like I see in the photo over there. A little bit more of this brighter, beautiful yellow that can come right in here. Some of those edges. And we'll leave just a bit of the edges as we start to come forward. Look at just a bit of the edges here. That's going to create the distance. So these edges will pull it in front of those. And we'll have to play back and forth a little bit as we do this, but we can do that. But we're watching edges and colors here. So we'll just tap some of this here. That looks good. We do want a bunch of this, but it has to be smaller so it goes back, it recedes back, right? I'm going to take a bit of my receding water sky here and go back up over to that side. So a bit of that can come in there. And just pull that way. Make that more of the light sky. Pull back and forth a bit, and that water goes right over there and disappears over there. That's what you want. In the photo, you'll see a little bit of, you know, like trees or something over here. We could add that. Those are a little dark, but we could just work them into some of that wet color right now. And it just makes it look like a little bit of distant trees here. Maybe some of that. So first you put it on, it's dark. Then I push, and it'll model into some of that wet undercolor that's there. And I'm watching it color-wise in relation to all of these other colors in here. So, but as we add more color here, we'll be able to add more color there. So we're going to go several more times, or at least I plan on going several more times back here as I work this. And then as colors tighten up, it's sometimes fun to come back and draw little edges and little things, because you'll get more of this light and dark interest through it. And, you know, you can smear up, and so it doesn't just look like little pyramids. You know, your mountains are soft, getting soft edges and stuff like that. So all kinds of ways that you can do that. Let's take a bit of this and make this slope right in here. Right up there like that. We'll slope down this side. That's kind of neat. Add a bit of that slope. So it's like the other one, but doesn't copy it completely. Here. There we go. Just movements like that. That's what I like. And, you know, sometimes, like when you're going to come back and do this again, you might have to reset a lot of these colors, because it's really nice to paint wet into wet, or to push it wet into wet. But that's not really very hard to do, just to reset some of the colors. You know, it's not hard to do at all. So always be willing. You're an acrylic artist. Always be willing to remix stuff again. And that's just some of the stuff I do. And that's some of the stuff that I like, because that's what gives me the ultimate interest into a painting, is that I am constantly modeling and remixing, and it gives more color interest. You know, it's, you know, oil artists, you can overblend and overwork your colors really easy, you know, and so the acrylics you can't, because they dry up on you, or these aren't drying up real fast because I have extender in them, but, you know, with a lot of artists you can. And so, you know, we'll do it a little different here, and we'll get some great interest and stuff into this. So this is going to be great. So we'll model this up a bit here, right up there. Take that down, pull some of that. Sometimes I'll use my finger or the edge of a brush to give some of that slope and that interest there. Right, let's just lighten up right on the edge of this here. So I love to do this. That's what gives just great interest, just little movements. And so this is an edge and this is a lost edge. So I'll lose or soften and lose some of the edges as I'm working down and watching this, right? So that looks pretty good. Now, as I come down through here, I'm just going to, you see that the prairie that's there, or right up underneath there, you see the prairie. And all I want to do is, I'm just going to take some of this stuff and just add a beautiful undertone here. I'm just going to take some yellow, maybe a little bit of our burnt sienna and a little bit of green, maybe a touch of blue. I'll mix this up, see where I'm at. A little bit green, so some burnt sienna, and then some yellow, some of this beautiful yellow oxide in here, right? And then I'm going to lighten it all up. Let's just grab most of this right now. And so I'm looking for the undertone, kind of a golden undertone here. And a really beautiful, like brighter gold that I could use, I don't want to use very much of, is Diarylide Yellow and burnt sienna. That's this really golden, glowy color. You can add a bit of that in there. You can see I just love this kind of modeling and stuff that I have here. So, and I'm just going to paint the whole front here with an undertone. And so I maybe just some water so it goes real quick, maybe a little extender. But this is just an undertone of it. So, and it's a little bit brighter than what we have through the rest of the painting. Does that make sense? So maybe right in here, I'll get it even a little brighter yet. So, and this color, all this color will disappear. We have to get rid of that grid and stuff, which means a certain amount of white and medium white needs to go in this. But I'm just going to undertone this, and to get rid of the white, preserve my painting here, and just do this and work that so I can see. So it's a little lighter, it'll have a little light and a little dark, but this will give me a good base for grasses and stuff to come on later, okay? So I'm going to block this all in, and then I think then I'll come back with you, and we'll maybe flip over and start some of the horse, okay? All right, see you in a minute. Hi everyone, okay, welcome back. So I just blocked that all in, and a few little brush marks and stuff in here. None of that worries. A couple of little transparent areas, none of that worries. We're going to paint over it so many times. So now let's go in and let's move this over just a bit, and let's block in some of the bison over here, just close colors. And again, like the horse, I'm going to concentrate most of the colors here off of, I'm going to use a 10 or an 8 or a 10 brush here. Burnt sienna, green and blue, and maybe some violets, but we can also do some of the medium white, which will help yellow it over a bit. But and I'll look at a few of the different colors here. Blue and burnt sienna is really a pretty color. It'll hit some of their mid-tones. Some of the tones along their back might have a bit more green to it, like right in here. Let's take a look. Yeah, that's gonna. Let's pick out this guy first, and we'll see. That's right about the color and stuff that I want on him, but maybe a touch lighter for right now. For right now, we're gonna start out. My plan this time is to start out the horse and the bison a little bit lighter, because they dry down. So let's start down a little bit light. Yeah, right about there. Right about a value 6 or so. Maybe even a 5. But we'll push some of that color on there. And then we'll get a little darker. Not quite this dark, but up here where they're shedding their winter coat here. And boy, they really, those of you that have never seen them, they're really raggy when they're shedding their coats and stuff. They're really quite raggy. But we're just going to block in for light and dark, what we call light and shade, and I'll tap some of this around. We'll be doing a lot on them as we get going. But light and shade, most of this is on the shadow side of them. So you could even into the shadow side have a little bit of the violet, which cools down that color, or violet and blue, red, violet, and blue, cools it down. This will darken it down just a bit for that shadow. And over here on this side, because we're painting the cast shadow side of them, or the opposite side, because the light's coming from the top and back behind them. So we're actually painting the shadow side of them. I'll add a bit of that back in there. That's kind of nice. A little tapping motion will make their coats a little rougher looking. But I want to get some more atmospherics in there too. Let's go back up kind of light, some of this I have left over from basing in the ground would work nice back up here along the edge and would help make a nice receded edge color on them. So, and again, distance. I'm always thinking of distance, guys. So, you know, he's going to be up closer. This back, this guy way back. So to make him recede, you add either the sky or the ground. We'll add both into him. And we'll paint more specific shapes and clean them up after we do some of the grasses and stuff. But another little shadow line here, slightly darker. Step way back on your brush. Try to get rid of the holidays. So, you know, the little holidays of color. And just start a bit of interest on them, okay, without getting too involved. We really want to work the horse first. So a little lighter here, and then maybe some of the shadowing right up here into the front. I might have to stop the painting here to hit it out because we have thunderstorms moving through the areas, and I hear some in the very distance back there. And so I don't like to run the cameras when there's a lot of lightning and thunder and stuff like that in the air, just in case. Even though we do have, you know, systems here that prevent the lightning strike and stuff, I don't want to fry the cameras, you know. But so we'll push this up. So this is kind of what I'm going to do with the buffalo and basing them in. This big guy here will work some other more colors in. These guys will be a little bit softer here. And when you're doing it, you know, I block them in. Those of you who've painted, the bison or the buffalo are not too much different than the cow in that they have a more squared face, so we'll do that. Now, so what I do is I'll just take these colors here and I'll go to the back. So to go to the back, I'll add some of the light, some of the sky, some of this, you know, soften these colors out a bit more. And that's what's going to push him further back. He doesn't need to go that far back. Here. So, and start out light because you can always make him darker. Here. So I'll start out the light. And I think that's going to be my main motto of everything I paint here. Start light because we can make it. So I start that light, and then while that's wet, I can work in some of the darker colors on him and darken him, because as something recedes, it goes further back, it becomes more like the sky. So, but you know, you don't always know until you're working on this guy. So I can work on him here. Let's put this back leg in and add some of this till he's just darker and still, but he's lighter than this guy, but he's still just a little bit darker. And as I adjust this one, like there has to be a little bit more shadow right down in through here. As I adjust him, that'll allow me to put a little bit more on the other guy here into the back. That makes sense? So it's a push and pull that you're doing with your painting here. So I'm watching this color in relation to that. For him to recede, it has to be lighter, if that makes sense there. Right? There we go. Just the ideas there. They get this nice little drop, kind of like beard here. I don't know whether you call that like a mane or whatever, like they do on a lion, or you get this nice coating that's all up in front here, and then a little lighter back here, which really helps him recede. That's good. So he'll recede. This one right here will be right between those two, but it'll be a little bit darker. I'll mix up some more colors. Burnt sienna green, a little bit of the blues here. Right? Let's do the front one here, I think. I want to see that front one come forward. So burnt sienna blue, really nice and dark, maybe some violet into that. Let's get some of the darks in here first. And let's go over a little bit more here. And right up in here, and so I'll go pretty opaque, really dark here. He's the high contrast one, so he can have a little bit more going on. That's probably too dark. I could lighten that, a little yellow, a little burnt sienna, a little medium white. Let's just lighten through that a bit. Leave some of the modeling there. That's good. And not quite so dark this time, Dave. Right down here on the side. But these guys I'm going to paint a lot. I really, want to do some nice bison, some nice buffalo here. And this is a good mid-tone right here. Check the values of it. This is down about a 4 or so. And then I'll go a little darker down here, which helps him round that, because we're looking at the shadow side, if that makes sense. This is his shadow side, so we'll get that in. So we're just blocking in a little bit for form, but I'm just thinking light and dark, light and shadow, and placement. So their placement within the composition is controlling that. So you see he's really coming forward to that one, and that one's going back behind. That's the goal here. We'll add a little more medium white to some of this. Even let it get a little bit brighter burnt sienna here is a good way to go that, because it's coming at you. He's coming closer to you, so you'll see a little more intensity to the color. Here. Right in here. Like that. That's kind of a good color for him. And we can leave him as he's shedding his coat a little more ragged up there. That would be kind of fun. A little more ragged. Just a bit more burnt sienna in that here. Yep. They're really a fun, big, beastie animal to paint. And I saw on one of the posts that too many people get too close to them. They're not friendly. They get to, you get too close to them. They'll ram your car up in Yellowstone. How many people are gored every year by the buffalo up there, the bison, because they think they're all cute and big, fluffy things. No, you stay away from them. They are nice. I mean, but they are not pets. Don't go up near them. Yeah, it's just every time I go up there and get around them and stuff, I'm just like, don't hit my car, Stuff that you see them all around. Let's get a little more dark right down in here. Just brush mark that around, and we'll, of course, we're going to paint for a tremendous amount of interest here. So we'll do that other videos and other sections of this video. So we'll get that. Let me get just a bit of this down. That's pretty good. Nice dark, a little more blue burnt sienna. So you get the idea here with this, and our whole idea here is to set up some, with our initial blocking in, a bit of the feeling that we want to have for the painting. So of that right there. So this one I'm going to have to paint right between the. So you'll come closer to probably to that one there. Let's get a little more burnt sienna in this, right up on the side of his face here. I'm going to leave, until I start the details, I'm going to leave his eye for right now open just a bit, and a little lighter up here, up on the front. You can leave, you know, those of your beginners, leave little marks, little spaces and stuff between it so you don't lose too much of your design. You can leave just a small little space there, and that works really nice. There we go. And you'll get the blue, burnt sienna, and some medium white or white, even a little touch of the gray here. A little more, you don't want it blue, so get that burnt sienna in there. We'll make just a light gray, a gray colored here for the horns, just to give a color, right? A little bit of color. There, let's do this one too. There. This one. Okay, now we'll just finish up this other one here. And so back into here, that could go just a touch lighter. Here. Bit more atmospheric. And I'm just going to keep them at this base end kind of simplistic for right now. And even a bit lighter yet, maybe a bit of the sky color back here. So base that in. Gives you a good feeling for depth. And I'm thinking about adding a few more little guys all around back up over here, smaller ones. You've seen me do that in the westerns with cows and stuff, so I'm thinking about that back there. I probably will before we're done. Long ways to go. Here. There we go, just an idea. Yeah, he sits, and you know, what really controls that is the dark more than anything else. You know, if I really want, you know, because the sky is the light. The light sets your foundation of depth that you're going to have to design. So darks really advance into the painting here, especially since my sky and everything I'm doing is so light. So darks advance. So I can come back and touch a little bit here and there on that one just to adjust him a little farther forward. Maybe a bit more blue, even darker yet, right up here in just a few areas, not everywhere, just a few areas will help pull him forward even more. Do you see that? So you can adjust like that, which is a great little thing to remember. You can adjust like that as you're setting those colors and stuff. So great little thing to remember. Let's go over now. Let's go back up over here and let's work on our horse a bit here. And I'm going to go up just a bit here. There we go. Go up just a bit here. And let's work on the horse. Let's take some of the darker color I have here. Burnt sienna, a little blue. I'm going to add a touch of extender here so everything, not to blend, but just so it slides over the surface, because I'm going to kind of preserve my drawing, be a little careful with this as I'm setting up a light and dark. And I like how John Howard Sandham always said, even with the portraits, we set up a mosaic of tones. So I'm going to come in and set up a mosaic of tones for him, maybe a bit lighter. He's going to be almost the colors of the buffaloes, maybe a little more green and some red, green and red together here, making that more of that bay kind of color that I want him. He's I don't know exactly how to call him, what color that color is on him. not a beige. He's got the dun jean in it, but he's got white stockings, and he's got like well, one of the horses I really like it too is Randolph Scott rode this really special horse, and Stardust was his name. He did many, many movies, like 20-some Western movies with Stardust, which was a really dark Palomino. It had a light mane and tail and white socks, but the color of Stardust was almost the color of this. So the Palomino's normally lighter, but this is a darker. They called it a dark Palomino. And so I was just like, I don't know exactly what kind of the coloring. So many now. So let's put some of that in. I really want to get this mosaic of tones up on the side of the face here. Going to be a little bit more greenish and yellow here. And again, I'm going to use multiple tones, many tones here. And I'm going to slide into some reds and stuff as well in here as I model this in. So it's going to have multiple tones. But this is the side here. And I'll just soften that in a bit, right? And some burnt sienna. So I'll be taking some just marks of the burnt siennas coming down through there as well. It's a beautiful horse. I miss all the days of all the riding and stuff, but that I did for years. There we go. And so I'm just going to model in many tones here. And a bit of the burnt siennas and reds. Go here, there, and again, I might read something here a little darker than what you think, what you're saying, and because I'm kind of planning a couple of steps ahead of what I'm going to do, especially in an area that I see it really modeled. So I'm kind of thinking a couple steps ahead of what color I'm going to use in that particular area. So I'm going to do a blue and some violet here and some brown, and we'll touch in just with the corner of the brush, the eye here, keeping that very soft. A little touch of that cooler dark right there, maybe up onto the front of his nose here. Make that line there, and yeah, that works. Let's get the. So I want to preserve the drawing here as much as possible, the lines of it and stuff, so that I don't distort my lines. I want this horse to be really these two, that and this one, to be the main statement of the painting. And you can see right now by putting these darks how much it's advancing in front of all of that whole area. So I have a lot that once I get this dark on, I'll be able to go back and really work on some of these other areas, adding more interest, because this guy's going to control it here. So, but we have a lot to do here. A lot to do here. Let's go some extender, modeled some of these tones up. So you may read it slightly different than what I'm doing right now, but like I say, I'm going to add more to it. I want to get just a bit greener into that here. Just a bit, yeah. And I'm going to get a lot of tones on him. A lot of tones here. It'll be fun to paint. He's going to be very fun to paint. And because he's so big too, he can carry a lot of tones. So here will be this nice big part of his throat there. Need that blue and burnt sienna as your real dark, so maybe a little touch of that red violet in there, right? Get that in. And then some of that, a real kind of yellowish, greenish kind of color almost in here. So I've got to try to find that. But right now, and you know, this Diarylide will probably make a beautiful undertone here for with it. Yeah, it does, because it gets a just a tiniest little bit of glow to him. And here we go. It's really kind of pretty. He's gonna, but we could adjust that up a little. Diarylide, some of our lighter color here. Adjust that up just a bit here, bit lighter. Work some of it. Just model some of that color in. See, and by keeping him all modeled up like this, we're gonna. What you do is you start to visualize him more, you know, more modeled up. So get that green in there. I'm going to be doing a lot of halftones, a lot of transitional halftones. I'm going to use a portrait technique on him, really, and that's what I'm very excited about, getting into the painting here. Use those halftones and everything to him, building him up. But look how he stands out with those found edges against the grasses and stuff. He's just like, boom, there you go, in your face. Let's try this green and red. And it's a real pretty little tone. Maybe some green and red and some, that's a really neat tone for him. Darker right out in here. That is just about, it's a little dark. It's a little more yellow. Go too much white, you'll change it too much, but a little bit here. Just half a value lighter there. It's kind of neat, kind of a pretty tone. He's going to carry a lot of different tones. He is going to be the, basically, a lot of colors. Let's go lighter. Let's take this. Let's even go maybe the medium white. Let's lighten that up to about a value, maybe a 6 to a 7, and put some of that. Again, it's kind of a greeny yellow, burnt sienna kind of undertone there. And a little burnt sienna and yellow here. A little bit of green, tiniest bit of green in there. That's his color right there. Yeah, that's the color. We'll push some of that in here. But we could go a little bit lighter on that. It's amazing how much darker it appears here because there's so much more light. But that is a beautiful color on him right there. We'll push some of that in. Always kind of following his shape here. He's got that big muscle, so let's pick up a lot of this. Right up here in the front, comes down his, but he's got that big, huge one right in here. Round it up a bit. There we go. Let's put just a touch of this down here to lighten that up a little bit. Yeah, that's better, closer. Let's just go ahead and paint through this chest strap here. We'll just paint him for his shape and stuff first. Little shadow down the front of his chest, separating his legs. Then we'll add all the decorations and details later. Right like that. right? And yeah, a little extender just causes it to move a bit. Let's darken it down just a touch. I'll go right through that saddle bit there. I'm going to use a lot of paint on him. I'm even thinking about going very textured and stuff. So, I mean, it's going to take quite a bit of painting here. A lot of work. But that's what I like, because I just love his colors and stuff on him. So let's get more of the shadows. Some green burnt sienna, some blue and violet. Deeper shadow coming right down here. Boy, I like that modeled on the brush where it's not mixing up. So sometimes that little bit more green comes out. It's a little too green, but not too bad. And this, so I'll just pick up a little burnt sienna, come back in there. There we go. Right in there, let's just add a mark or so of that right in there. It pushes that chest back. Pretty colors. Let's put that right here to build this muscle off. Here we go. Down. That's a little too far forward there on his knee. And I'm going to put a touch more shadow, deeper shadow, back here onto the back one to help that separation. There we go. Back up to a bit of light right here that helps bring out that muscle. Here. Here we go. Yeah, he's going to be kind of pretty. I'll have to add a little bit. That's a little thick on his leg right there. We'll add some. Let's go back to our blue and burnt sienna here. A little bit of that red violet. Keeps it from going too... There we go. Nice deep color. Yep. Let's just go right through that saddle strap here too. We'll paint it like it isn't there. We'll leave the saddle, but some of these other areas we'll just paint out. We'll add it back in. Drew it once, we can draw it again. Or those of you that have the plastic tracing, if you're not sure, go ahead and paint it out, and then you can lay the plastic back on and trace it back on later on. The whole thing in everything, and this is the way I've taught for 40 years, right? I taught my first class in 1983, and I was young. I was 26 and 25, and so it's a lot of fun, but your job is to give a success to the students. Does that make sense? And that's why it was like very much so. Use a pattern, draw it in. Drawing will come. Drawing and learning it and stuff will come over time. Till that time, you can just use your pattern to help you get proportions, get things right. And then as you progress, as you get a couple hundred paintings underneath you, and drawing becomes more of what you do and you practice your drawing, then you can step away from the pattern. But having that plastic to say, oh yeah, I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm a little off, that is just so, it's great. It's such a great little thing to have. A nice little crutch to go into. Just going to add an idea of those. And I painted too far down. I'm thinking I want to give him those white stockings. I want to give him the idea of a white blaze there too, I think. So I will probably come back and add those. Let's get this back up here. I liked that red and green, real kind of pretty color, and then to get some of that Diarylide Yellow in there. That is a real pretty color in that red. Don't get too much of that red. It's very powerful. But that's really kind of a pretty color in there on him. Maybe just a touch more green into that. Here. Yeah, that's better. Here. You know, he's almost like, you know, when you have the buckskin and stuff, you know, it's like a real dark, roan kind of buckskin color. That tan buckskin. Real pretty. I've been out from horses for so many years. I don't remember. My wife always does. You could tell. She'll say, oh, yeah, well, you know, that's a red roan, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I don't remember all that anymore. You know, sorry. I can go look it up, but it's a pretty horse. It's all use that. Let's get that confirmation. A little correct there. That's good. Darken. I like that. I think I'm going to try to remember that. Red and green and some of that yellow. That's just a real pretty, and then I can control that amount of green in there. It's really a pretty kind of a tone color in there for him. We'll remember that. And then I'll go a little darker here for his tail. Here. There we go. Down like that. A little bit of some of that gray here on his hooves. We'll just push some of the color in. Not perfect there. Just so we know. Here. There we go. Just like that. That looks pretty good. Well, you know, you can answer a few of the colors on the cowboy here. We'll do that. But I like that. I want to come back and because I want to stay kind of to the light side if I can. And so some of that dried down just a bit darker. So I'm going to add a little more green in that yellow. Touch of that red here. And let me go lighter here. A bit more of the yellow here. A bit lighter. Let's see where this is, right in here. Yeah. Build that muscle up here a bit lighter. Drag that around a bit. So once I get here, now underneath here is dry. So what I do is I'll go down to a half tone. Doesn't even have to be the same kind of tone. A little bit green in it. And I'll drop a half tone right in there. So this is the technique I'm going to be painting him with it, what we call transitional halftones. And I'm going to use them a lot on him because he has so many different colors. So like this beautiful tone can come right down here, this kind of reddish tone. I'll dribble a little bit of that in there, get rid of some of that green here. And up onto his throat up there, though, gets more yellow. So I'll shift it, what I see over there, a little bit more yellow. So I'll shift over to some of the yellow, yellowy orange right in here. I'll put some of that on. And then back to a bit of the light, well, that's wet right in there. And move that tone in, not blend it too much. And work this shadow line again. And each time I do it, see, I'll be putting in more and more and more tones, working those tones. This is how I envision painting him. Here comes the rain. I don't know if you can hear that out there. It is raining. And We'll grab some dark right here. Give the idea of the edge of his mane here. This will be the edge of his saddle here. There we go. And so I'll make little halftones. So I'll take some of this, so I can use that as a, basically as a form shadow over here to set a little roundness to the form. But he's going to have light over there as well. So, and then as I start to build him, I'll start to small down. Like I'll see a little bit of the light right in here on this throat. I'll come back with some of that shadow to preserve that structure, make sure that he's got the anatomy correct, and touch that a few times. But I'll paint this a lot. This is how I'll do. So I'll basically follow some of the forms, but tones. I'm painting in tones and half tones. Half tones are right between. So if I have a shadow and a light, a halftone would be right in between there. So if I wanted to soften that, see, I look to the dark, which is right over here, to the light, which is right up there, and I make a nice transition that's right in between, and I use that, and that's what softens that out, see? And they're both dry. I don't have to blend it. I can do that and leave those marks. And I'll be doing that a lot as I build this horse up here. I'll be looking for maybe a bit more of that burnt and that yellow. So I'll start a mark of that, and then maybe it's a touch too much, and so I'll soften it down, work a little tone here. Work the tones back and forth and around like that, and slowly build paint. I'm not going to be blending, I'm working tones. This is how I like to paint them, tones. So I'll work that, work this, and you can add extender or open medium to your tones here to keep them wet, but I'm a mixer, I don't mind the mixing, and you watch a lot of today's more modern masters, and they do a lot of mixing on their grass palette, a lot of times with the knife, and then they'll pick that tone up and make that mark. Then they go make another one. That's the difference between really a master and what you're doing here is the master will slow down, make those tones. Sometimes we'll make a tone and we'll just start touching it everywhere and everything goes flat. As you start to refine your painting, you've got to refine your technique so that you're not doing as much. Does that make sense? And smaller little touches, and they'll start, and he'll really start getting a lot of interest to him. So see, I might deepen that tone, even a little more blue, slightly different, not covering up everything up into that area there. And then coming out of it, I have a halftone. So I'm there, and this other little halftone will be right about in there. And see, that's a pretty little tone. And I can just touch across it and work that and just put on that little tone. So that's what I'll be doing, is dividing all of this up into smaller little tones. There's just a little bit of a reddish mark right up here. So I'll go ahead and add that. Maybe a touch of the yellow right up in there. And then right back to my shadow as well. That pulls right down there. And then a little deeper on that shadow on that edge. Right there. He has a bit of that underneath his eye. So you can see I can work those tones, and that's how I'm going to do it. I'm a tone painter. I'm not a blender. And, a lot of your Western painters, they don't blend. We tone paint, okay? And that's what gives you the interest. Now I got to build up this shoulder. So example, I'll take and I'll build this shoulder, this right up through here, this big flat muscle shoulder that goes right there. And I've got to build that up a bit, pulls back. So it builds up his shape. I'll add some light in here here like this, right? And build this up, and I'm going to go, and then I'll come back and I'll look for, I've got to reset that muscle shape in there. You end up repainting things several times, but I'll reset slightly different here with the shadow and stuff, slightly different here, several times here. But with a big horse like this, and you're going to be stepping back and looking at him, you can leave more differences between the marks. You definitely, so I have some transitional tones in here, yellows to a little bit greenish, a little bit reddish right up there, which I like. I could take a little bit more of that yellowish tone right up here on the front of his nose, and I see that, and I might pull that tone, put that yellow in there, and then soften that with a touch of red going over through it right in there like that. And then some of the shadow. I see some of the shadow. So this is how I paint. See, I'm not blending them together. My tones, the differences between my tones is subtle. Now, some of the artists leave more differences in them. And like I said, on a big Western like this, you can leave those differences because you step back a little bit, and then those tones through optical blending soften out. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to block in a light blue shirt and somebody hit. I'm probably going to go to a more of a traditional yellow chaps here because I like those better. I usually paint those. A good brown, burnt sienna and green. Make some nice browns. And, those are the colors I use on elk and stuff like that. I love those. And then into some yellows and stuff. So I'll base in some of this working here. And we'll put in some browns. And then probably the yellow oxides and stuff here. Some light tan colors that I'm going to put in on him here. So I'll block some of him in. Some touches of the yellow here up onto the knee. You've seen me do this in so many Westerns and stuff. So I'll block those in. And colors here. And there we go. And I'll put that, I like that darker brown. Darker brown, you can use the burnt sienna and the blue. That makes a nice darker brown. He has that nice decoration for the edge of his chaps here. So, whoops. Here comes the thunder. So it'll be a good time to stop here. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use this darker brown on his hat. I'll take a burnt sienna and a white and a flesh tone, put that in, a light blue, tone blue, some kind of version right in there, down here of his shirt. And then I'm going to take some time and work all these tones on this horse again. Not exactly the same, so this time I'll override some of the greenish yellow with some of the reddish yellow. Does that make sense? Working it back and forth. Work marks, okay? Don't blend them, work marks. And so give me a little bit of time. I'm going to have some lunch, and then we'll come back, and I'll look at that, and we'll show you some more details on the horse and on the rider, okay? But I'm going to take some time, block that all in, and work more tones on that horse. I really want that horse up there, okay? So see you guys in the... Yes, here comes my girl. She does not like the thunder. I know, baby. Yes, I know you don't like that, okay? Thanks very much. I got to shut off the cameras, guys, and I'll see you. I'm going to work on this a little bit, and I'll see you guys back here as I start to add some details and stuff to them, and then we'll go paint some buffalo. All right, see you guys. Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, it's been a couple of days. We have had storms, grandkids, extra dogs. My life has been a mess actually it's been a lot of fun. But anyway, I'm going to get back into this Western. Now, in the last, I filmed some of this where I came in and put the undertone in on him. I decided to go ahead and add some of this his reins and the saddle and some details here onto him. And I did do a little filming of it, but I couldn't speak during that time because we had all these thunderstorms and this loud rain, so the mics was picking it all up. So I just went ahead and filmed it. So I'm just going to show you a couple minutes of it, of painting here. We're not done with them. We're going to add some more, but I just want to show you a couple minutes of the video of me putting in the light tone, the shadow tone, and the half tones in on his shirt, on his chaps, and a little bit through the horse and stuff. And then we'll come back and I'll explain to you what we're going to do. Okay, welcome back. Well, I don't think that it is done by any manner of means. I've got some more stuff to add to it, but the important part is just keep that brush moving. Now, what I did yesterday during storms was I studied quite a bit of the buffalo, how I want to paint the buffalo, and I want to do that. But I also am running into a little bit of a problem in that I've got all this nice, beautiful undertoning and stuff on him, and I started some of the light tones, and I started to push it back a little bit. I'm going to change the color of the horse because he's going to come just a little too close, I think, to the buffalo, and I want him to have a little bit different look to him. So, and this is part of the process when you're, refining a painting like this and kind of finding your way. I'm not copying one specific photo. I'm putting together into this unit. And I think that he is just going to be a little too close to the colors of the buffalo that I want. So I want him, and in the original reference photo, he's a little bit different. And I want to make him more of a chestnut. Now, what is a chestnut? The chestnut is a beautiful horse, and it could have white stockings, which I might do. This is a chestnut. So I went out onto Adobe Stock, and I got a couple of photos. And this one is sitting in the light. This one is sitting into the shadow. The light is behind him. So this, and you can see, you get these beautiful kind of purpley tones here. I'm going to set this one right up here. And I'm not going to be copying it any matter because I already got the form of the horse that I like. What I'm going to do is, let me drop that down just a bit. So I'll put him right up there, and then I'll go grab this one and put this one right up next to it right here. So this one's in the light here, so I can see the colors of the light, and this is in the shadow, and you can see the difference of it and the more violet tones that go in. So I want to warm up, and in looking at the buffalo and stuff that I have here, I was bringing my light directly from the left, which this still works up here, but I think I want to rotate it just a couple more degrees to the front and light up the chest. Just like this one, I love how this one's chest is lit up a little bit more with that warmth, of the chestnut color before it comes around it in the corner. So I'm going to do that, and then that will allow me to lighten up the buffalo just a little bit more down through his center line. Does that make sense? So it's a change. I like him and stuff here, but we've got to be willing to change, and as you develop a painting, that's what happens. Okay, so yeah, let's get into that and change some of the stuff here. I'm just gonna pop a piece of tape right here to help tape that down. This is the painter's tape. It doesn't hurt the painting at all. It'll just stick down there. And then I'll give us room right here for the palette as we work on that. So I'll bring the horse back up into line a little bit more, add a couple of touches of light colors and everything to the Western Rider, and then we'll go over and we'll paint the buffalo today, okay? All right. First thing also, in looking at it, and let me show you this. This is one thing that's really, really good about it. So in taking off plastic. So I showed you that I do take off plastic, and I did this so I can show you. So everything that I have in my painting so far is right in line basically with with my design, except for is a little bit thinner right here. And still, so you can see everything is right in line. All of my drawing and everything, there's nothing really out of proportions. And my back right here is all in line. But when I look at the painting here, and when I was looking at the photo of it, I felt that the rider might be a little bit too portly, which a little bit too much like me. So I thought, I'm just going to thin that down just a bit. And let me just show you. So on my palette, so I got a fresh palette today, one of the colors I put out, which is a good neutral, is medium beige, medium white here. I'm just going to take some medium beige, a little bit of the burnt sienna, and some medium white here, which is going to come very close to what I have here. And I'm going to leave his high shoulder, and then I'm just going to thin him down just a little bit right here and leave the fold, straighten up his back just a bit and leave the fold here for this. Now we might want to bring this in just a touch here. I want to leave a bit of a fuzzed line. I don't want this too perfect. And then I'm just going to drag this out here. Okay, so I'll whisper this out, and then I'll re-add the shadows of those hills and stuff, because I've got a downstroke here. So you can see the downstroke mark there. I want to turn it into the angle. So a little bit of extender or so into this, and I'll move that out. Then we'll add a bit of extender and some blue and some burnt sienna, and we'll put that shadow in. This shadow. So when I do stuff like that, I'll start to carry the colors to both sides, so it still looks like it's carrying through here. And that's how I'll hide and fix up. And so when I go to change and fix up lines and stuff like that, now see, I like him a little bit better that way. And let's just take that in. So it's a little different than the drawing. He's a little skinnier than the drawing. And I like that. I like that better. He sits better. See, he sits better in there. And this is the thing, my daughter Jessica and I, she's out here right now from Pennsylvania, and we were painting together early this morning. And, we were talking about just the tiniest little movement of a line really makes a difference. So if you're a beginner, we want to make sure we get our confirmation of the horses and the riders and everything correct. And so make sure that you do take it off on plastic so you can check it if you start getting frustrated with it, okay? All right, so we have that. Now, one of the things you noticed in the video thing is I went to a synthetic filbert for doing some of the work and stuff on the horse. I really like it, especially if I'm going to work with thicker paints. And one of the things I did when I was working with those, with that thicker or with the horse, is that I took and added some open medium to my palette right out here. So I'm going to add that, which is going to make the horse and stuff, or the colors that I'm going to use, a little thicker and last longer. And then the other thing I put out, which I really like as well, and I'm going to use this on the buffalo. I've thought through my technique on the buffalo, and I'm going to use this. This is the extender medium that I've added the gel agent to it, and it is a little bit thicker than this. As a matter of fact, I can add more gel agent if I want. And you can mix this and open medium together. This slows down the drying time of the paint to several hours, 3-4 hours minimum. You can do it a lot longer. And it will also give a thickness to the paint that I want to work with, and a slippery nature to it. Okay, so when I'm going to look at here, I'm into the shadow. That's the color that I want right back in there. But I'm probably going to have it just a touch lighter. I might lighten up this chestnut a little bit, and I might give just the edge there. Let's go look at that first. Let's take some medium white, a little bit of our dirty. This is going to be a beautiful dirty gray that we'll get from our burnt sienna and our blues here. And I'll use this into some of the medium white. I paint as I'm developing something for the final of something, or working it, and we'll do this on the buffalo as well. I model my brush quite a bit, so my brush never carries a solid color. But I want to give just the indication here of that white blaze, which I really like on those horses. So here's medium white. I gray it just a bit, but then I'm going to pop it off even more white. And the horse can actually, since if we're going to paint that other one, the face can go a little bit of flesh tone color onto it, right up in here, which, we did the gray kind of before, but it can get a little touch. And just look at these small additions. I know this is kind of small, but these small additions that we could add in here, of what they're going to do overall to the horse, it's going to add a lot of interest to it. But one of the things that I really like about planning your horse, I talk about planning your horse, and I like what, I showed some of this onto the forum, And Jesse made a comment on there. Jesse Paint made a comment on there. They nailed that horse's head. I really do like the horse's head. But I want to, we can pop it off of this light color here with a dark, or we could put it in the white blaze. And then since this is light struck, we can go to almost, after we put that on, pure white right here, and put some more of the blaze on there. And that will pop his face off a little bit more there, like that. And then we'll look for that rough burnt sienna shadowed edge to hit that right there like that. So we'll have that bit of the blaze there. And then we're able to go into the stockings. Now, before I go down, because I covered up, I put a bunch of darks and stuff right in here. And I just want to check. So you see, I've got the feet that are going to go down below. Don't just assume, check. The feet will come down below there. So I've got to, because I painted right through that. So let's just take a little bit of gray. Burnt sienna, blue, and white make these beautiful grays. And I'll put these grays. You can see in both chestnuts, they have lighter gray hooves. So I will go ahead and restate some of the hoofs here. And even though we'll probably cover them up by the grasses and stuff they have, we'll go ahead and push these in for right now. And then I'm going to give my horse here the white stockings, some of the stockings that the others have here, because I do like that. So, and these are easy changes to make. And so I'll leave some of the dark going through there, and I'll paint these. This will just give I feel that one of the things I love, in one of the last paintings I did for you guys here on the channel, we did, the Wranglers, and I put them on basically an Appaloosa horse. And I love painting horses that have a lot of those color interests and stuff into it. Now, this means that up into here, if you're doing a chestnut, chestnuts have brown, basically as they're brown, and a little bit more of a reddish brown kind of thing. And then the mane and tail are usually right around that color here. Like you see onto this one here. It's got white stockings, but his mane and tail, you can see a little bit of his tail, is the same color as him. So I will actually put a little burnt sienna and stuff into this particular tail here. Just streak a little bit in, and that's going to take that right over towards that chestnut color. And I'll be looking to that. So first thing, I'm going to take some burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow, and I love a touch of the green into it. This makes beautiful, you look at this, and if I take edge of a photo here, so if I take this color, so burnt sienna yellow and the green, and I take that and you look at that color, that's the beautiful chestnut color. Do you see that? Maybe just a touch too green, but that's it, more towards the light. That's beautiful. And if I add a touch of, so if I take this chestnut, I see it's too warm to there, but you can really see if I add some violet to it and maybe a touch of white here, we'll head over here. You get this a little bit more cooler, so it could go a touch more violet, and this will give you a good idea. So if you're not used to some of these colors, you can pre-mix up some of them, so that's going to be pretty close. A little white to it, and I think we got it. We want to stay away from yellow. We just want to get that light, that thing right in there. That's better. That's better in there. And then deeper, so I would use, as I go to those violets, I'd probably use red violet for those shadows, okay? So the chestnut into the warm is going to be the burnt sienna, the green, and the yellow here. So burnt sienna, some yellow, and a little bit of green, which takes us over to that brown. But we don't want to lose completely that reddish kind of tone that the burnt sienna gives it. So we'll add that. Let's add some open medium and some of the the open medium and the thickened gel extender to that. And then I wanted to, I'm just gonna, give me 1 second, scrape off this knife a minute. I didn't clean it very well. So you can, which might be a good idea, to mix up a little bit of this. So some yellow and some green here. See where you are. And all these variations, a little bit more green, a little bit more yellow, all of those variations work. Let's add a little open medium and some of our nice thick extender. The thick extender you see me make, I just take the acrylic thickener and add it to the extender and mix it up. It makes a beautiful, you see me in other videos, okay? I just take the acrylic thickener and add it right to the extender, and it gels it and makes it nice and thick. So now I have this color. So this is a good median tone of the light, maybe just a touch more yellow right there. This is going to stay wet for quite a while, but let's come right down here. Since we're going to move our light source slightly to the front, I'm going to move, and I'll just paint around some of this the straps and stuff I did here. There's some of the decorations. I can paint up over this because I'm just, more than anything else, I'm hue shifting everything, giving him a nice lighter, warmer. I want to get a bit of that warmer chestnut color right up here onto him. And it's really kind of a nice way to start. Is you can see how that immediately warms him up, yellows him up a lot more than what that one is over there. Let's add a touch, because this is on the light side, a yellow and white to that, and see if we can sneak in just a little bit of the light. And I want to keep my brush tapping, moving, because I want some of the interest, the brush mark interest, which will give him even more interest there. So now you can see that beautiful color, and that's really kind of what I want. And then let's go over here. Let's just make that. So this is coming on my warm side. On my cooler side of him, I will take some of that, and then we're going to go to violet. Let's go to the red violet into here. Maybe a touch of blue sometimes. Just the tiniest little bit here. And that's that cooler tone. Let's add a little white here to see where we are on this, how much violet we see. So now you see you got a cooler and a warmer part of him there, and that's pretty neat. And we've added some of our open medium and some of our gelled extender, so that's going to stay nice for a while. Let's come in and see, I don't have to redo a whole bunch of stuff because I already set a light and a shadow, and I'll just come into here and just lightly come over some of this. I don't even have to take out all of the shadow. I just have to give the chestnut color in there. And that's what I'm looking for. And I'm going to look right into here to see if I'm getting that color. And I'm a little bit, still just a touch orange to it. And so I'm going to add a bit of the blue, not to everything, but I'm going to put a bit of this over here so I can darken that down a bit here. And just paint it again for a little more. I leave some of that there. This is where your horses and your painting get a lot of beauty, guys, is if you leave this and you treat this just like broken color. See? So I've got all of that working tone underneath there, and that just looks really great. So, you know, it's easy if you're in a horse in the same family, say it's a roan, a red roan, or a brown horse, or a sorrel or a chestnut, you can change their colors really easy rolling through there. And I'll probably just do it. And that, I love that deeper tone right there. That plays really nice. And look at how much better all of that comes off of this ground, bringing him up to the front. I like that. So we'll add some of this deeper, little more of the chestnut brown into some of these deeper areas here, cooler areas. That's kind of neat. Okay, so I first painted it with a little more greens and stuff into it. Now I'm taking it just a touch to the violets, and I like that. What you see into that horse there. So you see those tones right in there, not the deepest, darkest, which is right in here, which is some of your, you just add some more of your blue. So if I take this and add some more of my Phthalo Blue to it, I'll get that real deep, and I can touch a bit of that right in there and a few of the deepest shadows. And that's how we vary those tones quite a bit there. Yeah, and that looks better. And I want to keep in more brush movement, more brush and movement of those brushes. So let's go back to a bit of our, because we can come with a half tone that's right in between the warm and the cool here. And we can use that in some of the transitional areas here. So let's just, and I'll just push those rains back on there. I like that. That's a tone that I see right up in there, see? And it's going to be into like one of these shadows right in between there. Now let's add a bit of light to that. And let's just work some of the light. That's going to be too light. So, and make sure that I'm always adding. If it's too thick, you can add a little extender to it. But let's put this down and see where that is on him. That's a pretty color there. I like the brush movement, the movement of the brush, that you see all of those brush marks. That's what makes him look great. So we consider the first part really, you know, sometimes when I'm painting horses and stuff and I'm not sure, and on this one I thought it was going to be good, but I change my mind as I start to see the colors. Here I'm just adding cool down that side, taking him a little bit more. See, he's taking him away from, right here, you see, he's taking him away from the brown to a little bit more of those chestnut colors. That's where I'm going here. And a little darker with just a touch of the blue there. And see, I don't need to change all of him. I just need to get some of that color in there, and he's changing color. Do you see? And so you don't have to repaint everything. And this is what really makes it great, guys, is that you can make these small evolutions, and this is what a lot of artists do, is they refine, you know, and it's like Helen Van Wyck, which I've told you guys 1,000 times. You start with a broom, you finish with a needle. And, you know, that works for your color too. You get your colors mainly into the main part of where you want to go with your colors, and then you're going to slowly refine them. And that may be, you know, a little later on as you decide, you may end up changing some of those colors, just like I'm doing here. So, but you don't have to repaint everything. You don't have to repaint everything. You can, you know, the Dutch, for years I was a Dutch, I loved to paint the Dutch masters. And I did it by, you know, layers and layers and layers of glazes. So we never did straight alla prima, one time through type of painting. Now I'll put a little warmth in this, a little light right up here on this big shoulder muscle. Get some of that chestnut color coming back in here, right? Love that color, because you'll pick up some of that just slightly warmer right there. See a tiny bit of that yellow and stuff in there. And you can find these photos I got up onto Adobe Stock. Go out and find yourself some beautiful colors of horses that you want to paint, and then we'll paint them. Let's put some of that, a little bit, maybe some medium white into that. We'll push that, because I'll still watch the lighting of my original horse, and he has that light struck area right there. We'll push some of this right in here, some of that right there into his neck, and so we'll push those big lines right in there, and that will help his shape. But see how he's changing over the colors. Let's put just a little bit of that light right down here. I'm going to have to just touch over those reins, but that's okay. I can do that. Let's take our cool plus just a touch of the blue right here and reinforce that shadow right there just a bit. Yeah, and that feels so much better on him. Let's just get that chestnut mane here. Oh, that's going to be warmer up there now that we changed that direction, so we'll get that a bit warmer right up there. Some of that area here. There we go. And see, even with that undertone, he looks pretty good. Now, see, this is what I do now too, is overall, like right in here in his neck is really cool. But if you look, even in here, even on the cool side, you'll get just little bits of shines. It could be bouncing light, reflecting light of some of the warmth. So I'll come in and just add little touches of that warmth. So here, over here, a little light, a little bit here, some of the light and that warmth coming down through here. Right in there. There we go. That looks really good there. Maybe, and I love that transition. See that grayness that comes up there with that. And you see it up along that one too. That's right up into the eye. And that's that burnt sienna and blue and white that we made that gray. That's really pretty. I might widen out his blaze just a touch more so it stands out a touch more. Let's get some gray and some white here. Widen it out just a bit here. And here we go. Just let's put a better streak. This is almost pure white here. Right there. That just stands so much better. A little bit of the cool color right up against the edges of that, pushing in, that just models it a bit. It doesn't go to his eye, because if it's a diamond, it doesn't go to his eye, so I have to take it away from the eye there. Usually doesn't, they usually don't get a pie-eyed look to them, so we'll stop short of the eye. There we go. That's neat. And you might pick up just a touch of that right up here. Right up there. Here we go. That's good. See, it just picks that up just real nice. Now, I'll probably, after, I'll work on his feet a little bit more, but I might want to set some of that white right here, right down so I see where his feet is going to go. And I'll cross. We'll have a touch of warmth maybe onto this one here. So I'll touch that right in there. You can see how that's going to work. And into that gray to and even you can even gray it down with some of the burnt sienna and blue, or basically the green and the the burnt sienna, which will help gray that down as well. Let's take the cooler side here, a little cooler back here, the cooler colors, tap those in. Cooler, which has the violet in it, back here. See, that just works. You can even just glaze over some of that. Some cool with a bit of the blue here. Right back down here, let's just pull that right into that stocking a bit. And see, so that stocking can come down a touch, so I'll just, and that's all wet, so I'll just take most of this off of my brush and just drag down, and that will set that stocking back. And so I don't, sometimes I work, like if I'm into the lights, we always remember the good rule, right? If we're into the lights, we're really opaque. We're into the shadows, we thin out, and that's just, keep those rules going. Those rules still apply, right? Keep those rules applying still. A little warmth, maybe just a touch into that as that stocking. Some of that light, maybe a bit of warmth into it. Right there, under his front leg. And this is not too bad, but I want to get a bit of that warmer color right in there. That just looks wonderful on him. Boy, and we'll get a cooler bit right in there. Cooler bit right down into this shadow as it's going in there. See, that glazing just works really nice. Let's go up just a touch of warmth right in here. We have a nice deep shadow. We'll leave a little warmth there. And yeah, that's working. Let's go a bit of our cool, maybe a bit of white and a touch of the warmth. So if I'm going up in value, you know, what's the good rule? As I go up in value, I will warm my colors because I was just a bit. So I take my cool, add just a touch of warmth to it, maybe a bit of the yellow. That's too much of that medium white. Let's right in here. Let's try that. Get both of them back in there again. Yeah, that's kind of pretty. And I'll build this up a bit. This is that big shoulder muscle that comes down right there. That's kind of pretty. So we get some variation here. Now this is too much variation right there, so I'll take a common color across both of them just a bit, and that'll bring harmony to both of those areas. That's some of the stuff I like to do. There we go. Yeah, and we can, and you can look for, I love, like on this horse, it's got a big, huge, like really nice shadow that's formed right up here. And I do like some of those deep shadows that you can get onto the horses. So I might just accentuate some of these deeper shadows. A little cool color, a little bit of blue here. And bring some of this muscle structure and shadows back up a bit more here. That looks pretty good. A little bit of shadow there. A little bit of shadow right in there like that. You know, you're drawing the anatomy, the structure here. So this is going to shadow back just a bit there. Let's get that. I put in his girth strap here and just light there. That's kind of neat. Yeah, overall I like that, but I like in this one, he's got some variation into that neck. So the neck is a little too solid right from here to here. So let's see if we can get some variation. I'm going to add some extender. I'm going to thin my shadow, a little cool, but a little bit of blue, some of that, just a bit of that warmth. Let's just walk across this for just a minute, see if we can get some brush marks in there that will help change his coloring over. Let's see if we can get a touch more light, warm. Since we did shift our warmth over just a bit, a little bit more yellow. Don't want to get it too bright, too much, but just a bit of warmth. And I'm painting into a wet area here, so my color will disappear or soften out quite a bit. So that's one reason why I'm increasing it, because it'll tend to disappear a bit. So I'll just increase it, some of that warmth right there. That's pretty good, but maybe a touch too much, so we'll add just a bit of the shadow back here. But I like those big planes of strokes. I like this color, so let's build this right through here a bit. You can see it's a touch darker and a little bit more of the warmer chestnut color. But I like that. I need to now, so I like everything that's happening here. Let's take a thin wash of our blue and our cool right up over this edge just a bit, bringing in some of that chestnut color and as I work the grasses, I'm going to come back and work his feet again, doing exactly the same thing there. I don't want to get too involved into the feet because I'm just going to end up painting them out and changing them. So I'll just play here for a second, but I'm going to do so much here in this area after I add the grasses. So I'll just clean it up a little bit here, get some of those colors and stuff in there, but that'll get it. So you can see the whole kind of feeling of the horse change. Now, I really do like the blues, and I like the violets, and I love this blue that I put here. I just took his shirt blue and put it down here, but I want to get some of these violets in as well. So let's go over here. That's too much. Rather than use that, this will stay nice for my painting for the day, and those warms and those cools. And so I'm going to use some of those over on my buffalo, so I create a harmony between the buffalo and the horse. But I'm going to do a lot of the buffalo what I did the undertone in this horse, which was burnt sienna, blue, and a little bit of violet, sometimes green in it, and that was that whole undertone of the horse. So, but I want to carry some of these kind of violet cast colors. That's a little too violet, but it's pretty, but you can see that. Let's get a little bit of blue into this and some violet. Take this off to the side. Medium white is good because it has a little yellow, and it'll make that violet a little softer. And that's what it needs to be. Maybe even a little beige into it. You can see it softens that down here. So let's, we're looking for this real soft kind of violet here. And let's see where we are. So we take this, put some of that right there, and see right where we are. We're real close to it. It'll probably dry a little bit darker. Well, it will dry a little darker. It might. So let's just see. And you can see how light that is. So I kind of like that, but I might have to because everything here is wet, because I put the open medium and stuff with it. But we want to have a bit of that color show up here. Maybe right through I'll just push some of that back on. That gives that nice kind of reflected light color on him. And I like the blue as well, but I do like that kind of. So I'll look back through here on the shadow point. So he has some of that coming right back up here. A nice big dose of it on that one that comes right up here through his neck and down. That's kind of pretty right there. And I'll make sure that I remember this as I start to add some of the colors to the buffalo. I want to remember this, the violets and stuff that I add here, so that I can use some of these same tones on the buffalo. So by itself, it's a little too light. So that's why I'm touching it with my finger and pushing it right into the base color I already have there, so that it doesn't overpower it too much here. And let's get a little bit of that. Just put his big forelock out here a little bit more. Not quite like that, Dave. There we go. Just a bit more. Touch of these violets. Change the color just a little bit. Like that. Oh, I like that on him. And see, I'll just touch it and push it into, it's just a nice little shimmer on him here. I don't want to get him too much there, but this might be too much. So I'll just take a little bit of my cool, a little bit of the blue. That's too much of the blue. Thin it out. Lots of extender, because this, all you need to do is glaze it lightly. Push it back here into position. There we go. That's the broken color of it all too, guys. And all those little marks just add so much to the painting here. So now So light's coming in this way. My shadow's going to help support that, but I could give a better sense of light and dark. So you look between here, see the sense of light and dark. I can give a better sense of light and dark by, let's take some of our color here and let's lighten it up. Maybe even a little bit of the Diarylide Yellow here and give a better sense of light and dark here. And onto this front, maybe just a bit here like that, drag that down. Let's put some of that light right down here. Nice sense of this light tracking right there, right? Bit sharper right here. Maybe just a bit here. That might end up being too much, but I don't think so because that's kind of where I want to go. I want this lighter sense of light and dark through him. So we'll do that. We'll add just a touch of the light. Let's even put some of that right up there. Yeah. Maybe this nice light, warm little tip of the ear up here. Right up here. Right up there. Don't lose all of our shadows up there though. Let's touch some of that through. There. That's pretty good. And I got his, I know it's probably hard for the camera to pick it up, but I see it right up there as just a touch too pooky, it pooks up on his mane there, so I just want to push that back, and I'll just take some medium beige, which is a good intermediate color on these mountains up here, and just paint into that, soften that back just a bit. So I do that a lot. I cross-carry colors like that and kind of fix something up. If you make it, move it. That's always been my rule in my classes with my students and stuff for years. You can make any color you want, just move it. So I'll move it through some of the other areas there. There we go, just like that. And let's draw his, because I lost most of the shadow on that ear, so let's take a little cool here, just a corner of our brush, and that just comes right down, right in there. There we go. Right in there like that. That sets that ear back on that side. Maybe just a touch of that warmth and stuff onto this side of the ear. There, that's good. And we'll make sure we get this even the cooler chestnut color here kind of piled up along here for that, his mane that's folded over to the other side, but you'll pick that up. So see, you changed his whole kind of perspective. Now I could even come back and put even some lighter, warmer touches here, like sunstruck touches right on him, and really pop some of that nice warm interest on that side. You know, it's even warmer than what he has on his, and that's going to be your call. Maybe it's a little too warm. We'll put a little burnt sienna in it. That's really nice. Okay. And so I've got his saddle, his straps here and stuff like that to redo, but I will take just some nice gentle shadow here, shadow lines. We have details and stuff. I'll add some of the details a little bit, but we'll just add some of that shadowing back in so that this chest strap and stuff here. So you see some of it over here, some of his throat shadow here. go. Some of that. Yeah, we can brighten some of that up. You would, you know, that's going to be our call later on. But I kind of like that there. That's kind of nice. And so he's got a bit of a light there. That one over there has a touch more. I could just add a little bit right here, bringing that side up, maybe a little right here. You can start refining down your values and stuff a touch more to see if you're getting it where he likes, but I think that's going to work pretty nice. Let's get a little bit lighter right up into the very front, some of our medium white, just so I see it, especially here on that front. Yeah, maybe a touch more. So that worked out pretty well here. That worked out pretty well for putting that on, getting that. And his stockings here are a little high. I should go down below his knees a bit here. They can go up that high. On my horse, they were up that high, but on these samples here, he's a little bit lower. So let's just take that down a little bit lower here. And of course, I'm getting into the painting of these too much. I should just... There we go. That looks pretty good. Now see how he pops off quite a bit more here. And he's a little more painterly, which is what I like here. I like this cooler color, reflected light color here for violets down that side there. That looks pretty nice. Okay, and of course the shadow that I put out here will help. But I could rotate that shadow a little bit more farther forward. I like the way he is right now. I can rotate it a little farther forward. I can make those decisions. I'm just going to add a little bit of light right in here. I can make those kinds of decisions after I work on my buffalo here. So I'm going to move this over. I'm going to reset here, so we still want to keep him in frame a little bit if we can. I'm going to put up some buffalo pictures here, and we're going to paint some buffalo, okay? So give me just a second to reset, take these pictures down, get my other reference up, and we'll paint some buffalo, okay? See you in a minute. Okay, welcome back. I reset some of this. This is the guy I really want to paint right up in here. I love these colors of it. And Jessica said, oh, you ought to paint all these stickery things in there too. So we just might add some fun to it. But you can see now in relationship to him why I wanted these colors a little bit different. He's a little bit more of the darker. These beautiful colors in here are made basically burnt sienna blue and the red violet, but a little bit of green in that, which gives you that kind of grayish cast to it. So I'm going to save these over to the side, and if you're at all worried, they're going to stay nice. But let's look at the buffalo colors right here. Now, we're painting the cooler side of him here, good shadow and stuff with it. But I want to look at, this is the shadow tones. These are the light tones. So the light is really kind of up above him a little bit. So and that's all I need. I need the shape, and then I need to know the lights, and then we're going to paint most of him in cool, but I'm going to shift this color over to this side so the light's coming in on that. I need him for coloring more than anything else. Does that make sense? Because I know pretty much where those shadows are going to be. So we're going to take some blue and some burnt sienna, a little bit of the red violet, which keeps it cool, and a bit of our green, which helps keep that red violet tone down. And you see, you get this beautiful darker gray here. And you can start white, or you could use the medium white too. But see the gray in there? That beautiful more, it's a little bit more grayed. And then, so this is going to be the gray. And then I'll look at it compared to here, and I need to go a little bit more violet. So we need a touch more violet into this. But we're going to want that other gray as well, because that's just good broken color, right? We might be able to get it really good with this, with a little bit of green and violet as well. That might do it a nice way to get to it as well. So that's pretty darn close to that upper part, but we need a bit more violet as we get into the shadows. Now let's add some open medium here. If it goes too violet, just tone that violet back down with a touch of your green. The green, because I got a lot of violet on my knife there. But that is a good deeper tone that's right in there, so that's not bad. So we'll leave that one as well. But let's just start laying in some of these colors on him here. So we'll come right back up over here and we'll start laying in some of this tone here. Here like this. There. Okay. And then we'll go lighter, a little warmer here. A little more light as we come up out of that shadow here, as we head up towards the lighter part of him. And I'm going to paint him very model. So this is my synthetic again, and I'm going to use, I want to keep him over to those grays here. And like I said before, I'm going to add a couple of tones from the horse in there, which I want to do. But I want to get this lighter now, this lighter color. And this is a good reason to have some medium beige out. Let's go medium beige, yellow, and white. And let's just see how close, because that is really close to that. And let's push some of that right up there. Not all the way. We don't want to take out all of that shadow. So let's grab even some of my warmth from my horse here. Push that in here. Like that. And some of this onto this side here. This side. And I'll bring that light back up again. So once you get some of these other tones in, see, I'm going to use, I love, one of the things that I love is, and one of my favorites is this. This is a painting of a buffalo by Tucker Smith. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful painting. And a lot of depth and interest to it, but a lot of brush movement. And I love the mechanics. Well, I like everything he does. Just a magnificent artist. But I love his mechanics of some of the stuff that he paints. And so I want to emulate some of that. I'm going to push some of that shadow in here. And we're going to take some of this real dark, and that's going to go up onto the top of his head here. So we're going to push the light and shadow. So light coming this way, shadow coming this way. But we're also going to have a little bit of light up at the top here. So I'll push that in. Some of the light up here at the top, but maybe a little grayer. And lots of little movements here. That'll make him very, a lot of nice movement to him. So, and I love that movement. And maybe some of them marks that will show the roundness of his barrel there, but, and we'll add little touches of the horse colors in here as well to get this. But you're painting him, this variation here for light and shadow. That's what I'm looking at. The light and shadow of him, right? And let's move this over just a touch here. I don't have to reach quite as far. Some of this right down here. This nice transitional, little bit of the warm transition right there that's going to go down his lighter, even into the shadow. So, you know, you look at, so I even look at like Tucker Smith's here, his shadow of that color right there. It's just beautiful, rich, deep color. So that's what I have in there, which is his shadow is almost like the horse color here with a little bit of our dark here. And we'll push some of that in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a good hour, which you don't need to see, but this is what I'm doing. See how I'm just tapping the little lights, and now I want some of this warmth and this light from the horse over onto this side. That's going to cause his head to come out. So, and then we'll push the darker in and around the horn here, right? And but just that edge of that light. Right, and then we'll get burnt sienna and yellow and green, even some of this medium beige. These are all beautiful broken colors that you can use on this buffalo really easy. Burnt sienna and green, of course, is one of my favorites. Sometimes a little bit of the blue and the tiniest little, approach it very small and you know, proportional wise, guys, because the tiniest little changes can make a big difference in the color. And so we're going to push this around to make him all kinds of fluffy here. So I'll use some of this tone in here, just small, and this is where I use all kinds of different tips of the brush here. So now I got all these colors: buffalo, buffalo, horse, okay. And but I'll take some of that and push it over here. Just get some of those tones in there as I start to build him. And deeper tones over here, darker, more blues, some violets over here on this side. Here. Right over there. And then we'll get these grays. I like these grays. I want to look at these grays, maybe warm just a bit with some of that horse color right up here at the top where that light's going to be. Right up there like that, see? Keep those brush marks moving, right? Lots of brush marks on him. Touching different bits here. Right like that. There, so you can see he's starting to get the modeled of the tones, right? Modeling of the tones. And that's what I'm going to do. So he'll get lighter up through here on this side, and then the darker, more cooler tones, more violets, more of my deeper violet colors here, blue and violet, as I get down in here into the deeper parts of him. Some of those deeper shadows will look, some of that can come on him here. I love the filbert for, especially if I'm working with thicker paint like what I'm doing here, because it allows me to sketch as well. And so I'll sketch some shapes and stuff around and fill in and stuff at the same time here. Like that. Here. Like that. So I'm going to just do this and build him up like that, and build him and build him and build him. Small marks of tones. These will be the ones, these are going to work on that. And see this tone, so I have this tone in here that kind of harmonizes him a little bit with the horse. Let's put this back over a bit. So it harmonizes him with the horse, but yet I'll have some of these deeper ones in here. And I'll just be using a lot of really small marks building that tone. So rather than take up a bunch of time with it, what I'm going to do is we'll film some parts of it so you can see my brushwork that's in there with the lights. And basically what I do, when I do something like this, is I put on a light and then I soften around it into the tones and around it, smaller little brush marks. Each time, small little changes on your palette are going to make a big difference here. Make a little change, a couple marks. Here's the big rule. Don't paint too long with the same tone, okay? Move, move, move. And, and make sure that you keep yourself with the light. But I'll film along the way here, show you guys how I'm building it. It's just going to be building just like that, building more color. And kind of what I just did on the horse here too. All right? Okay, I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Okay, let's get at it. So we're going to start in on the buffalo. We're going to use basically the same techniques that we did on the horse. I'm going to start by moistening some of the shadow areas here. This is burnt sienna, a little bit of blue. You could vary it with some red violet, makes it darker. Then come back in with small marks, and notice how I'm just tapping the palette. I switched here to about a 6, I believe it was, a filbert brush here, synthetic. So it's a little stiffer, a little springier. But warm up some of that center area there with a little bit of burnt sienna and that shadow color, just tapping in. And remember, variation of the color is important. As you get over to the light side, light's coming from the left. As you get over to the light side, add a little bit there by the horn, tapping slowly as you go up. Make your taps kind of smaller. The key to everything here is varying the color, varying the taps. Try not to make the same mark in repetitive areas. Remember, you have a transitional area, so take the light, take some of the dark and some of the siennas, and make transitions. If you get too much a little white, like I did right in front of the horn, just break it up with a little bit of the shadow. Back and forth, back and forth. I ended up painting back and forth on his head. I don't show it all here, but I back and forth on his head about 3 to 4 times to get that variation up there. Add some medium beige, a little bit of white, a little burnt sienna, a little green. You can make light colors up onto the top part of his back. Again, varying the colors. And add some medium values to reinforce the shadows. And just keep building, adding more shadows, adding more lights. As you come around to the side, remember the right side is the shadow side. So not quite as light, trying to get it not quite so light. I put a little bit of light up at the top, but then I'm going to soften it out later on. Actually, we're going to end up building some of these areas here with a palette knife as well. Okay, as you go down the side, add a little bit more burnt sienna, a little green, a touch of red violet or blue to cool it. Keep it. Remember, you're heading into the shadows, and shadows are cooler, so you want to make sure you constantly reinforce that. But you will have little bits of hair that stand up and maybe catch the light, so make sure you add some, like about a value 4, no lighter than a 5. Just to add some modeling in there to make it look like his hair, his fur on it. Make sure you break up some of the areas with some shadow, tapping some shadow back in there. It's very important because I put out a light, and light are opaque colors, and the opaque colors can take out a lot. So it's it's a good idea if you go back and revisit your shadows from time to time. I use my shadows to help correct objects because they paint out so easily. Make sure you always go back and revisit your shadows, and then you can soften those with a little bit of mid-tone. Always making sure that the left side of him is going to actually express more light than the right side of him because the light is coming from the left. But see how you could use the shadow to negative paint around and add more interest. And here you see I'm continuing to build, and notice as I'm adding texture, I'm now changed the grip on my brush where I'm laying it flatter, and that allows me to apply more paint to the surface. And so as I finalize an area and decide this is going to be the value that I'm going to use, then I start building thicker paint, and you could actually lift it off and push it around into the the shape that you want some of that hair to be. So you just don't want to tap, 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 tap in there, because the filbert brush will make the same mark, repetitive mark. So you want to push it, and look at how I turn the brush, use different corners of it, constantly moving the brush, and go back with those shadows like you just saw, that put those back on. Put on light, put on shadows, soften it with midtones, building, 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 building those colors, looking for constant variation. And like I said, after I do all of this, I come back and I add some marks with the painting knife, the palette knife, because that to me gives the most interest, which you'll see later on. But continuing to build again and again and again. Notice how I'm concentrating on getting rid of those consistent marks. I'll come in and add the eye. This is some of our blue and red violet. A real dark color, and I'm using a smaller number 2 fusion filbert, softer filbert. Then I'll add some lighter color around the eye. This is a green color, so I usually make my green grays with the pine green, a little bit of red violet, sometimes some burnt sienna. Burnt sienna and pine green are beautiful colors on the buffalo or the bison here. And then you can also you can add more red violet, like you see on the left side of the bison, or excuse me, the right side that you see, which is our shadow side. You can see he looks a little bit, that gray that's there is almost a little bit more red violet. That's what I do. I add a touch more red violet, which makes the color appear a little cooler. So up and along the top part of his head and his shoulders, he's very warm, and then his body appears a little bit cooler. But add the details, the eye ring, basically it's an eye ring with some of that grayed violet, green and violet, maybe a little burnt sienna in that, then lighten it up with just a little bit of medium white or white, and you'll build it. Now you can see that bison, I built him even more. And as I move through the bison, you can see, look at all of the colors, the tones that are in his body there. That is multiple times, painting it multiple times to get those tones in there. And I use the small brush to do the detailing. I use a larger brush to quickly apply tones and then start breaking up the tones. And what do we call that all? That is our broken color. Remember, in every lesson that I teach, we always talk about broken color. And so here's another bison, working it forward. And as you go to the other bison, they don't need to be as detailed as the front bison there. These guys can be a little bit less. And remember, as you get further back, especially the furthest one back there on the right, he's going to be more atmospheric. So I will actually add some of the blue sky color to him here. But you can use less texture and, still they get the marks for interest, but there's less light and dark on it. So if you look at the bison that we just finished and then compared to the front ones, the front one has more light, more expression of light on it. And as I paint one bison, I go back and I add more. So I constantly, like I tell you guys in so many lessons, so many paintings, once it doesn't make a difference if I'm painting a flower or if I am painting a bison, I always go back and revisit the main one, which is that big long one, large one. So as I add colors to the other bison, I add colors back again to the main bison. And throughout the entire painting, he gets built again and again and again and ends up with the vast majority of the colors on him. Use your small brush, add some of these details, little lights. Don't forget to add your blue colors and stuff like that into your shadow areas, but little lights on his horns and stuff like that. And notice not as much detail on the eyes or any of that kind of stuff. And you want to soften out, just like I did there, just tapping out the edges. You don't want a lot of edges on the bison that are in the back, because edges bring them forward. So keep their edges softer. And here you see built again and again and again. And one of the most important colors on the bison, on the buffalo, is the dark. And use that dark to reshape, reform, pull down on his face here like that to square up his face, give him the correct amount of form. You don't want him, rounded over or anything like that. So give him his correct form and stuff with it, with those dark colors. So then I switched back after I got those guys back into the main part, I want to start adding multiple colors. This is a little yellow oxide, a medium beige, and a tiny bit of green. We want to have a little bit of green showing up into the painting here. And what I'm going to do is just use the brush and start applying a mottled ground of color, all kinds of colors. I will actually add a little sky as I go into the back, and I will add brighter colors as I come up into the front of it. But shadows, lights, work the colors back up in between the buffalo. We go back and we'll set their legs and stuff back in, but work them. Notice how the brush is moving all over, guys, all directions. There we go. And we go back up. So I add some of those colors and I'll go back, and I decided to soften back my sky and taking some of the blue. Remember, we added that sky with the medium white, a little bit of medium beige, a little bit of white. Give it that dusty, dry feeling. And now I'll come back in and just soften some of those exchanges and drag some of that color down over those back mountains again. This kind of softens out some of the look. I want the mountains in the front to be very colorful, as you can see, and then everything else start to soften. So you may like a lot of brush strokes in there, but we got to soften it. And I'll continue to build some of once that is wet, while that's on there, using the large brush. And notice I'm using a large brush to help paint some of the initial color back into those mountains. The larger the brush, the more the softer the edge that it creates. So it doesn't create as much detail as a smaller brush. And you don't want that detail as you go further back in those mountains. And remember, I'm softening those colors. Those are your beiges, your medium whites. Those are those dusty, dirty colors. And then I'll add a little bit of the light sky color to it to help recede those mountains. Remember, as the mountains recede, they have to become more like the sky. So we've wet that area that we're painting into with some sky color, and then we're working some of this color back in there. And the large brush does a good job. All you're looking for is light and dark. So I have a shadow side that I'm going to put on. So I'm just some of the shadow of the mountain, and then the light side. So we have a shadow and light. Up in the front mountain, I'll be painting for interest with rocks. We'll add some smaller stuff in there, but we do it without edges. That's the biggest thing, everyone. You do it without edges. So I got a shadow, then I'll come back with a light. So light is coming from the left. So you imagine all the slopes of the mountain from the left, get the light. And we'll continue on down the sides here. Now, if you notice, I'm up in the front. Now, I'm not using my big brush. I'm using a smaller. This is a 1-inch. And so I'm going to take some light. I actually make it too light, and then I'm going to paint it back down into position a little bit. And that's the way I like to do stuff. I tell you guys that with flowers, with everything I do. I paint too much, and then I start to push it down in position with more medium tones or more shadow tones. And likewise, the same way, I'll shadow too heavy and then start painting down the position. It's really great to do that up in the front mountain up here, because it's the one that can have the most interest. And remember, as you step back a bit, make your color a little bit softer, maybe even a little bit of that sky color into it, so that back mountain does not carry as much light or as much shadow as that front mountain. That's where all the interest and stuff is going to come, into that front mountain. And as you step back, you add more sky. You can increase your darks. I found darks that I really liked out of the burnt sienna, touch of blue, touch of green, touch of violet. And I just vary those. Sometimes I would get that real dark and add just a little bit of yellow oxide to it to warm it a bit, so I get that variation. You're painting the front of the mountains, you want lots and lots of variation. That's key. There, and as I come up to the front, to me, this is the most fun part of the painting. This is where we take our painting knife. Notice how flat I hold it. The first thing I'm going to do is take some of my greens, burnt siennas, yellows, tone it down with a little bit of the medium beige, which is the common color for our painting. And I'm going to just drag it, and sometimes watch, I'll tap it onto the surface And what that does is it makes that little mark. It's going to give the impressions of trees and stuff as they go back. So I'll use the color a little heavier up into the front and then a little bit less as I go back. Restate some of your lights. Notice how I move my knife and tap my knife in different positions. So you load it, I push it on. If you push on, you soften. If you light pressure, you apply color. So when I'm going to apply trees or something like that, my pressure is pretty light. If I'm putting on like the light, like I just slid on light onto the hill, I'm pushing pretty hard and sliding that color so it moves. So the color will create the slope. The movement of that knife creates that slope. So make sure you always drag that knife in the direction of the slope. And then once I put that color on, I can come back with a little bit of green, tap into it, smaller marks, small marks, because the length that you pull that knife is going to give you the impression that those are little trees sitting all around that lake that's way there in the back. So you don't want to do big, long marks, but you can do big, long marks on slopes and stuff. So once you get some of the trees in, then you can soften them with some of the ground colors, come back in, slide some of that around, and that will start to soften some of the edges. You could always come over with your brush and stuff and soften it as well. But here I wanted to create like a little hill, so I slide some light. And notice I hold the knife very flat and I push really hard. Use some medium beige, a little yellow, a little bit of medium white into it. And you get that, and then you hold the knife light and you get that granulated, and then I'll push and drag back and forth, and you get this undulation of color, which is going to make it look just like a hill. So you keep working. I work all the way around. I pull some of that light all the way around some of those trees. And notice I hold the knife very flat. This is when I'm working that, and I call this burnishing down. So I want to have all that interest around the lake. And you can see I built a lot of those colors around the lake. And I want to have some of that to create that edge, small edge of like this is a little hill. And then it drops down and then you see the trees. But then I've got to just gently, and I'm using my finger there to just gently manipulate the color into a little bit of a directional movement that will make it look like a touch of a hill. But as you come forward, using those colors, burnish it down. You can also, like I do right up here around the horse, I don't need that much interest, so I'll add some open medium. Open medium to do this is fantastic, because it gives you the feeling that you're painting with paint, but yet it also gives it transparency. So when I go up around the horse and stuff, I'll add open medium, and it doesn't have as much effect on it. Then you plow on some color, more yellows, burnt siennas, a little bit of greens, touch into some of your Diarylide, maybe a tiny bit of that Hansa Yellow. Build up small marks up into the front, which is going to create the undulation of color for our grasses. But as you get up in front of the horse, you're going to use large strokes. As you get back here, like I'm showing here, you use your knife and some of the other things that we have, and we'll put on small. See, it's a smaller mark because the grass is not as high. You need that for perspective. Then I'll come back, use my brush, and just soften it in. So I came up with a technique here I really like. I put on lots of light color with my knife, and then I come back with a paper towel and my brush. I use both, and I push up and down to create that movement of the grass, rather than causing a repetitive motion up and down with the grass like I've done in some other videos. I use the knife to apply a lot of paint and then the brush to soften it. As I go back, I'll add some of that open medium so it becomes a little more transparent, so that color becomes softer, and of course you do less height on that brush for the grasses. And you continue to build. As you come forward, add a little bit more greens, more yellows, and I'll create a medium tone, and then I'm going to come back with some heavy color and create the light tone. And as you come even farther forward, then you build more and more paint and you get lighter. And then what is most important for this perspective, linear perspective, the grasses in the front will have a longer stroke than grasses in the back. And I use my paper towel like you see here and my left hand. If you notice, I'm a right-handed painter, but when I paint grasses, I use my left hand for a different type of movement. So put on a color like this. Use your paper towel, pull through that. Now this light color here is medium white. It's a little yellows, a little bit of medium beige. I slide it on with open medium. Put open medium in it because open medium is going to help the transparency. I'll slide it on with some of the paper towel. And if I get too much like I did there, I'll slide a little darker color into it, break it up. And so if you find an area that's too much, slide some dark into it. Use the brush. You know, this is my old brush. The paint is old. The whole brush is stiff. And I'll use that to go through and break up some of the areas. The key is to try not to have repetitive marks. Now notice back here, the marks, the knife mark is even smaller because you're getting linear perspective. So the grasses won't be as tight. And you can break it up. You can do here, like I use some water. You can see it drip down the front there. But I use some water to help soften some of it as well because water is your solvent. So if you get a little bit too much on there, you know, use that solvent to get that. But I'll leave some of it up there because I can always paint back through it and soften it out. The key is to build and build and build, and that's what I do here is I build and build and build several times back and forth. And I go back in and I'll add shadows underneath the buffalo and the horse. I'll add, you know, I'll go to my smaller brush like you've seen me do in other westerns and stuff like that where I create the grasses. I'll use the wispy edges of the large pastry brush and stuff to create the grasses, but back and forth. And see how you just manipulate and push those grasses into place. Small marks in the back, larger marks as you go into the front, and vary some of those colors. See, there I tapped in some of the yellows, and then just a little bit of light and small marks as I get back there because that's emulating the small grasses. As I come forward, I will touch into lots of big marks. And I'll build the front of this painting several times. See how the mark gets smaller, smaller, smaller. Little marks as you go back. That is the key to all the perspective, guys. That is the key to everything that we want to do. Always remember where you are in the painting and your marks, and vary your marks for color. Okay, everyone, well, there you go. So I got this done here. I spent a lot of time, you know, I showed you some of the clips and stuff of adding those, the grasses and stuff in front of here. Now, remember your perspective, that the grasses will be a little taller up here in the very front near the horse, and then they'll slowly get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I just used the palette knife and a soft brush and rubbed that in. Added some more buffalo there into the back. Don't forget to touch into your blues. Carry some of your blues into the buffalo on the other end. Overall, I really liked the painting. For me, it was a little bit difficult because I had to do this over a week, and I usually do a painting like this in 1 to 2 days, but we've had so many storms and I'm trying to film it, and so the whole video is a little disjointed. I'm sorry for that, but you can always come on to our Academies of Art, which is on our Facebook group. So anything that you can ask, any kind of question in there. I've posted some final photos in there. And you can ask questions, post yours or anything like that, and I'll be happy to answer that because I'm in the academies every day, okay? All right, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. This summer, we're doing an entire summer of roses on this channel and on our other Paint It Simply channel. I've already started to post some of the videos over there, so don't forget to check out the Paint It Simply channel on our YouTube as well, okay? Thanks very much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Please push that like because that helps us with the distribution of our videos. We try to keep as much as possible for free here on the channel, and that just helps us with that to do that, okay? All right, guys. Until the next video, which will be in a couple of days, which we have a larger rose master composition of that. I'll see you guys, and you have a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.